I'm elected by the people of District 3. I have the privilege of serving as chair of the board.
Good evening. My name is Lee Altman, Mecklenburg County Commissioner serving at large.
Good afternoon. My name is Vilma D. Leek, and I represent the most powerful district in this county, and that's District 2. Welcome. Will all the seniors please stand? Everybody's young, huh?
Good evening. I'm Laura Meyer, and I represent District 5.
Good evening. My name is Susan Rodriguez McDowell. I'm elected by the people of District 6.
Good evening. I'm Dina Diorio, County Manager.
Good evening, Tyrone Wade, County Attorney.
All right, before we get into our meeting tonight, I am obligated to share with you that Mecklenburg County is currently under a mask mandate. However, tonight, I am going to take the privilege of suspending that for tonight, pending the outcome of tonight's vote. So the first item on our agenda is the joint proclamation declaring February 2022 Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. Did we decide who was going to read that? All right, Commissioner Meyer, are you prepared to read that?
Sure. Whereas 1 in 11 female and 1 in 15 male high school students have experienced physical dating violence, 1 in 4 teens report being called names, harassed, or demeaned by their partner via cell phone or texting, and 1 in 9 female and 1 in 36 male high school students report having experienced sexual dating violence. And whereas high school students who experience violence in a dating relationship are more likely to use drugs and alcohol, are at greater risk of suicide, are much more likely to carry patterns of abuse into future relationships, and are more likely to engage in unhealthy dieting. And whereas the severity of intimate partner violence is often greater in cases where the pattern of abuse was established in adolescence. 48 domestic violence-related homicides took place in North Carolina in 2021. And whereas 81% of parents surveyed either believe teen dating violence is not an issue or admit they do not know if it is one. And whereas by providing young people with education about healthy relationships and relationship skills, and by changing attitudes that support violence, we recognize that dating violence can be prevented. It is essential to raise community awareness and to provide training for teachers, counselors, and school staff so that they may recognize when youth are exhibiting signs of dating violence. And whereas the establishment of Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month will benefit young people, their families, schools, and communities regardless of socioeconomic status, gender, sexual orientation, or ethnicity. And whereas everyone has a right to a safe and healthy relationship and to be free from abuse. Now, therefore, we, by Alexander Lyles, Mayor of Charlotte, and George Dunlap, Chair of the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners, do hereby claim February 2022 as Teen Dating Violence Prevention and Awareness Month in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County and commend its observance to all citizens. Witness our hands and the official seals of the City of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, Vi Lyles, City of Charlotte, George Dunlap, Chair, Mecklenburg County Board of Commissioners. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let's see by show of hands. Any opposed is likewise. The motion carries. I understand there's someone here to receive the proclamation.
Do you want to say something?
Oh, yeah.
I'm good with you, baby.
That's the proclamation.
Am I giving him something? Do I need anything to give him?
Thank you for recognizing February as Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month. So I did have a story from a local church. This incident happened in January of this year. A woman named Miss Rosa Gonzalez contacted me asking for presentations for their teens. An 18-year-old girl named Haley, who grew up in the church and sang in the church choir, she found herself dating a 16-year-old boy. He was jealous and controlling, and in January she went to a gathering with some friends, and it is unknown what the argument was about, but he ended up shooting her. Police arrived and found her dead in an upstairs room. The church member who shared this with me wants everyone to know how important it is to raise awareness for teen dating violence. She was just a couple weeks from going to boot camp in the Army. She was an excellent student, and she will be remembered for her kindness. So she just wants to thank you all for recognizing the importance of this issue.
Thank you so much, and I just want to share with you that proclamation will be delivered to you at a later time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we move now to the proclamation on Black History Month. Mecklenburg County, North Carolina Proclamation, whereas since 1976, the month of February has been recognized nationally as Black History Month by every United States president, whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson has been credited with obtaining this national recognition through the founding of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History and the launching of Negro History Week in February of 1926. And whereas for generations, Black Americans have helped to shape our nation, and Black History Month is the time to honor the contributions and legacy of African Americans across the United States, its history and society, and whereas citizens are encouraged to celebrate the works of activists, civil rights pioneers, leaders in industry, politics, science, culture, and more. And whereas in Mecklenburg County, we recognize the contributions of Harvey Boyd, designer of the Mecklenburg County Seal, Fred Alexander Sr., the first African-American elected to public office in Mecklenburg County since Reconstruction, and Algera Westbrook, the first Black supervisor in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Public Library system. And whereas each year has a specific focus, and the Black History Month 2022 theme is Black Health and Wellness in recognition of Black scholars, medical practitioners, midwives, and others who have served in keeping the community well. Whereas we honor the legacy of Theresa Clark Elder, who served as the first Black nurse at the Mecklenburg County Health Department and dedicated her life to improving community health. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners fully endorses this theme, which is in keeping with our priorities to help reduce disparities in health care that will allow all citizens access to the service they need. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners do hereby proclaim February 2022 as Black History Month in Mecklenburg County and encourages all citizens to join in the special observance. The 16th day of February, signed George Dunlap, Chair of the Board. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, Commissioner Lee.
Let me first say thank you for this body recognizing a month of 28 days that says to those of us who are Black, we have made a major contribution in and for this community, as well as this country. And as I sit here as a member of this body, elected by the people of District 2. I'm grateful to have this opportunity. And it's not funny to me, it's serious to me as it relates to how people were treated during the civil rights movement. And there are those who advocate not to have it a part of the educational component of our textbooks and in our regular public school system. So I say to us, we are Americans. We were born and reared in this country. We have helped to make it what it is. We fought in the wars. We've washed and bathed your babies. And I lived through the civil rights movement, and I pray to God that we never have to do this again, that there will still be freedom for all, and that we say this to our children and teach this to our children, that all people are equal. And the thing that concerns me the most is when you begin to talk about how you love Martin Luther King, and if he were living today, you still treat him like you did then. Not you personally, but this country did not respect him, did not care for him, and said he was a troublemaker. And those of us who believe in the rights of all will continue to speak and say what we have to say. And hopefully, somewhere in your hearts, you'll find some way to respect and accept us as we are. Have no control over the color of my skin, but I can say this, that I'm proud Black, and I'm proud to be who I am, and that the people of District 2 respected me enough to vote for me to actually represent them. I remember when there were only 5 people sitting on this dais, and there were 5 white men that lived in the same community, and they all voted the same way. So I say to us, teach your children to respect all people. As you ask us about these masks, speak the same. Speak the same. Live the same. So I say to us, and I charge you, I thought I would have the opportunity to read that proclamation as a Black woman, having sat here a long time and lived a long time. But that's all right. God provides a way anyway. Bless you.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, let's see by show of hands. All right. Opposes, likewise. Madam Clerk, that passes unanimously. At this time, we'll move to our public art moment. Receive a presentation on the public art piece, Wishes of History West End, located on Stewart Creek Parkway. That presentation is by Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's really awesome that we have such a full chamber tonight so that everyone can take in this art that is provided by the county. I love that song. Okay, so I'm going to read this script. Okay, so for many of us, the mention of dandelions takes us back to childhood and memories of how we would pull them up out of the ground, blow on them with as much force as our lungs could muster, and make a wish. The featured artwork for this month's public art moment is more than a playful reminder of such memories. It pays homage to past and present residents of historic West End and represents how their influence and impact have spread throughout Mecklenburg County and beyond. Wishes of Historic West End, located along the Stewart Creek Greenway near the Greenway Trailhead at State Street in District 2, is the latest addition to Mecklenburg County's public art collection. It was installed in December by Durham artist Stephen Hayes, who is a former McCall Center artist in residence, an associate professor of sculpture at Duke University and a past winner of the 1858 Prize for Contemporary Southern Art. The artwork is based on the design of the artwork on the last stage of the dandelion when the flower head matures into the familiar spherical seed head. It consists of 6 sculptural dandelion seeds that are 13 feet tall and made of core 10 steel. The sculptures are accompanied by artistic benches that give Stewart Creek Greenway visitors places to rest and congregate. When sharing his artistic design with historic West End residents at a virtual community engagement meeting in 2020, I happened to be there at that meeting, and it was awesome. And I really encourage everyone here, when you hear about one of these community engagement sessions, you should show up because you will have a direct influence on the art that's resulting from that. But at that time, Hayes asked participants to share words and phrases that best describe their community. He then inscribed each of the 5 hairs on all 6 dandelion seeds, with one of the words or phrases. This includes a sculptural dandelion with the date September 4th, 1957, the day Charlotte Mecklenburg schools were integrated, and the names of the students who made history that day: Dorothy Counts, Delois Huntley, Gervade Roberts, and Gus Roberts. Wishes of Historic West End was created in partnership with the Arts and Science Council and the Public Art Commission with a budget of $36,000 funded through Mecklenburg County's Percent for Art ordinance. The budget covered the artist's fee, design, fabrication, and installation costs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll move to our public appearance. Prior to having persons speak, if you would listen to these words from the board. Public appearance is the period during the board's regular meeting that members of the public are provided the opportunity to speak on matters not appearing on the agenda. Members of the public who appear during the public appearance portion of our regular meeting may discuss any matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Commissioners except for the following types of matters: a matter which appears on the agenda of that meeting of the board, a matter which concerns the candidacy of any person for public office, including the candidacy of the person appearing before the board, a request that the board consider funding a certain program or activity, either from the current budget or by inclusion in a future budget. Such requests will be made at the board's annual budget public hearing. The time limit for speaking is 3 minutes. The limit is 3 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. If there are 4 or more speakers who wish to speak concerning the same matter, in which case all persons wishing to speak on the same matter will be considered a group and given a total of 10 minutes. The board reserves the right to alter these rules on a case-by-case basis as necessary for the efficiency and effective conduct of business. Members of the board will not engage in dialogue with public appearance speakers. Comments will be received and followed on as applicable by county staff or members of the board. If you have handouts or tokens, they should be given to the clerk for distribution to the board at the conclusion of this meeting. So let me just announce in advance that everyone who signed up to speak, who still wishes to speak when your turn comes, you will each have 3 minutes. So at this time, let me call on the following persons for the public appearance portion. Anthony Abraham, are you present? Or is this virtual? Sharon Abraham? Okay. Lisa O'Brien. If you would come down to the podium, please. So, Brian, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Last year, parents raised alarm bells about remote learning, but school boards like CMS dismissed us, and the results were no surprise. We've all seen the pitiful student outcomes, and sadly, many children will never recover or reach their true God-given potential. And history repeats itself again this year, as this county ignored the consequences of masking for far too long. I hope that will change tonight. Several local physicians and medical professionals have emailed their concerns and requested meetings with Dr. Washington and our school board. Those requests for meetings have gone unanswered. Some people want to subject our kids to mask wearing until we reach an arbitrary transmission rate, which is neither relevant nor realistic. Based on the state's own data, there is no measurable benefit to masking. So why would we continue to do something that has no benefit and is clearly detrimental to our children? I do appreciate that some of you have indicated your support to lift the county mandate tonight and have acknowledged the psychological and developmental harms of masking children. But may I remind you that many schools have been safely operating mask optional this entire school year. I have 2 children. My son at a private school hasn't worn a mask, not one single day, while my child in CMS has rarely seen the faces of his teachers or peers since starting high school last year. Our youngest learners have never known anything but going to school in a COVID world. Masks make some children feel safe because they've been conditioned to believe that by adults. Paper and cloth masks are doing nothing but giving people a false sense of security. And we all know that on some level because we wouldn't be going to crowded restaurants and sporting events otherwise. There are far more effective ways for those with fragile health to self-protect. I think I speak for many parents when I say that I'm not being paid by any special interest groups. We're not politicians or radical activists. We are parents on both sides of the aisle who are heartbroken and fed up with the heinous treatment of our children over the past 2 years. Masks are harming children. And it's not noble or kind to knowingly cause harm to anyone. It's time to stop focusing on masks and start focusing on the vulnerable kids behind them. My question to you is, will you put children first tonight and hold CMS accountable to do the same? Thank you.
Okay, so the time is now 6:37. So at this time, the chair will call for a motion to open the public hearing for a business investment grant.
We have appointments.
Okay, I'm following this agenda. All right. So is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? The ayes have it. So carries the motion. Shahid?
Yes, sir. Shahid Rana.
Okay, Rana. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Dunlap, Commissioners, and Manager Diorio. I'm here to present a business investment grant for Rival Automotive USA, Inc. All right, we're going to move on over. So Rival Automotive USA, Inc. is a UK-based electric vehicle and battery manufacturer. Their proprietary battery modules built in their microfactory. The modules can be used in all of Rival's platforms, enabling the customer to configure their battery requirements according to their specifics. In-house design fits within Rival's plug-and-play hardware and software. Operators are able to replace just one module instead of their whole pack. which provides a cost savings and downtime. This particular project will produce 110 new jobs at an average salary of $54,700. With the investment that Arrival's making, it's going to be $11,350,000, with $3,350,000 being in real property and $8 million being in business personal property. This grant will qualify for a standard grant, which is 3 years, but because Arrival is an existing business, they will qualify for an additional 2, making this grant proposal a 5-year grant, also at 90%. The proposed location for this grant will be in an opportunity area in Mecklenburg County. There is competition for business investment grants, which the competing site was York County, South Carolina. The map that I'm showing you here is just right in the 2nd district here, just below the airport. The red star that you see is 2708 York Mart Road, which is the proposed location, which is actually just a minute away from Arrival's previous BIP grant recipient. That existing location that we approved their previous grant was for just over $40 million, providing 281 jobs at an average salary of $42,000. That particular factory there at 4100 Meadow Oak Drive is for their micro factory to produce the actual vans. So the previous grant that we approved last year was a micro factory to produce vehicles. This grant that I'm presenting tonight is for the batteries to operate those vehicles. Arrival's been busy over the past few years since being in Mecklenburg County, starting off with their headquarters, secondly with their micro factory, and this 3rd project here in Mecklenburg County for their battery production facility. Arrival provides full-time job opportunities for GED and high school graduates with training opportunities and benefits. Disadvantaged Businesses Enterprise Program, and they're looking to increase utilization of the local supply chain. So there's been discussions with our office and our BDI program as well. Arrival has joined the HBCU partnership under the National HBCU Caucus to also engage with minority colleges within the North Carolina college system, including Johnson C. Smith University. They've also implemented a diversity and inclusion board internally and also incorporated diversity and inclusion policies and practices for employees. This is a part of their onboarding and training with their HR protocol within the company. So this is a snapshot of their community engagement and also corporate culture that they're incorporating here. The next slide will really show you the projected induced jobs. These are additional jobs in tandem to the 110 jobs that will be hired by Arrival. This is per our economic impact model that will show that this particular project will induce an additional 151 jobs over the course of the 5-year period term. This project is also expected to induce an additional $141,100 in sales tax revenue by the end of year 5. Arrival is expected to net the county just over $50,000. That's $50,197 in revenue in the final year of the grant, which is 5 years, and for a cumulative net of $186,780 over the 5-year period. As you'll see from the graph here, the total revenue of the project is the green line, showing the overall total expenses of the project coming into Mecklenburg County, and we're net positive from an economic impact study analysis that we was conducting here internally with our economists and with our office. Partners and incentives. So as mentioned before, this project meets BIP guidelines for a 5-year, 90% grant because of its location in a BIP opportunity area within Mecklenburg County. It's also an existing business looking to expand within Mecklenburg County. Our grant proposal was for $250,677. There's also interlocal support with the city of Charlotte, in which they have approved a 5-year, 90% grant on January 24th of this year in the amount of $143,800, bringing a grand total of grant incentives from Mecklenburg County and the city of Charlotte for $394,477. The Board of County Commission action is to adopt a resolution approving a business investment program grant to Arrival Automotive USA, Inc. for a not-to-exceed amount of $250,677 and to authorize county manager to negotiate and execute a contract. And before I conclude my presentation, I would like to point out Ms. Erica Ruane, who is the head of city engagement for North America for Rival Automotive USA, Inc.
Welcome.
Thank you all for your continued support. We look forward to continuing to grow here and make connections with local organizations and residents. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
I have a question. If we signed up by email to speak tonight, is there going to be an opportunity for that? It's not on this.
We'll get to that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All right, so hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution approving a business investment grant to Arrival Automotive USA, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $250,677 and authorize the county manager to negotiate terms and conditions and execute a contract?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved, Mr. Chairman,
It's
District
been
2.
moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be, let's see by show of hands. All right, any opposed? That's 7-1, Madam Clerk. All right, so at this time, we'll move back to our appointments.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll hear from Commissioner Laura Meyer, who was appointed the Ad Hoc Interview Committee Chair for the Citizens Revaluation Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank our committee members, Commissioner Vilma Leak, Commissioner Pat Cotham, and Commissioner Lee Altman, for participating in these interviews of this advisory committee for revaluation, which affects everybody in our county. So I want to thank you for that. We met on February 7th and met for hours and interviewed 12 people. And we agreed to nominate the following unanimously to the full board. It's a 10-month term expiring December 31st, and the names are Philip Carey, Kathy Davis, Peter Gallo, Robert Janazik, Wayne Johnson, Peggy Peterson, Gregory Roberts, John Stroop, and Sean Sullivan. Congratulations to all who are joining us on the advisory committee for the revaluation process. It's going to be a great year. Thank you.
Going to move adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? Likewise, the ayes have it. So carries the motion.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say something? For the man who asked about when your turn is, after the Director of Public Health gives his presentation, then all the people that signed up to speak will speak after his presentation. And I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, there's appointment needed to fill one 3-year term expiring February 28th, 2025. Alan Kathman is eligible for reappointment.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Appointments for Information Service and Technology Committee. Appointment needed to fill one 3-year term expiring February 28th, 2025. Walid Omar Hamid is eligible for reappointment. Is there such a
So
motion?
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. We need nominations to fill 3-year terms expiring February 28th, 2025. There are 3 eligible applicants that the board can nominate and appoint at this time, per board policy. The applicants are Perry Chapman, Jonathan Gorky, and Aaron Howells.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded to appoint these 3, to nominate and appoint. All right, are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. And then lastly, A nomination is needed to fill one unexpired term expiring February 28, 2024. The board can nominate and appoint Austin Morphees at this time, per board policy.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and so carries the motion. At this time, we will have the Historic Landmarks Commission Annual Report. Jack, good to see you back.
Thank you, Chairman Dunlap, Commissioners, Manager DiOrio. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the work of the Historic Landmarks Commission over the past calendar year. And tonight I have brought with me our chair of the Historic Landmarks Commission, Mr. William Hughes. Mr. Hughes is a native of Charlotte. He also lives in Oaklawn Park, which is one of our most recently designated local landmarks or local historic districts by the city of Charlotte. And he has served on the Landmarks Commission since 2008. This is his first year as chair, and hopefully we'll be able to have him for maybe another year or two. So, Mr. Hughes.
Thank you, Jack. And greetings, commissioners. It's good to see you guys in person. And I'd like to start off by sharing with you a little bit about what we do. As Jack mentioned, I am the chair of the Historic Landmarks Commission, and we are a very busy commission. The Historic Landmarks Commission was established in 1973. It's comprised of 12 appointed residents from across our community and a dedicated staff of 3 county employees. Through the work of the HLC, Mecklenburg County has the largest number of designated historic landmarks of any county in North Carolina. From mill houses to office towers, the HLC strives to preserve and protect sites of historic and architectural significance that represent the diversity of our community. We work to designate historic landmarks. We oversee design review of proposed changes to such landmarks. Where appropriate and necessary, we work to purchase and resell these places subject to permanent preservation easements, and we receive the donation of easements on landmarks. Some of our powers and duties include recommendations of designated historic landmarks. We administer design review of historic landmarks. We negotiate purchase and sale contracts for the Historic Landmarks Commission, and we receive preservation easements. As you can see, obviously, we are an incredibly busy group of volunteers and staff, and where we need your support is continuously sharing our good message of what we're doing with your constituents in your respective districts. We need you to share that with your leaders in those districts so that they can become involved, and also share areas of interest in their communities that they would like to have added to our list of items to study for potential designation of historic designation. Now I'll pass it back over to Mr. Thompson, and he'll share some of the additional items that we're working on currently.
So, Commissioners, this is the show and tell part that we bring to you every year of some of our recently newly designated local landmarks. And if you have the screen in front of you, the image on the left of the screen, the William Pepys House is at 831 East Worthington Avenue in Dilworth, and is significant for its association with regionally prominent architect William H. Pepys. Pepys designed and occupied the house as his personal residence from its construction in 1919 until his death in 1950. Other examples of Pepys' work in Charlotte and elsewhere have been well documented and recognized for either their historical or their architectural significance. Example of these include Latta Arcade, as well as the J.B. Ivy department store. On the right of the screen, you'll see the Larkwood Chadbourne Mills plant, and it possesses special industrial significance due to its lengthy association with 2 of Charlotte's largest hosiery producers. The enterprise's contributions to the local economy as manufacturers, employers, consumers of local goods and services, and taxpayers were enormous from the late 1929, when Larkwood Silk Hosiery Mill commenced operations, until Chadburn Incorporated ceased production at its Charlotte plant in 1978. Moving on the left will be a building that many will recognize as it dominates the skyline on East Independence Boulevard. The Irvin Building at 4037 East Independence is a significant historic property for its association with Charlotte developer Mr. Charles Irvin, a builder turned developer who founded the Irvin Company by 1951 and capitalized on the building boom following World War II. The building, completed in 1964, was constructed as the first major large-scale commercial structure along East Independence Boulevard and still retains its mid-century modern design and the important features Irvin included to create a cohesive workspace. This is a very interesting project and designation because many of you may notice that there's an incredible amount of work that's now happening on that building to bring it back to life. This is a classic example of how the work of historic preservation is actually leveraged as economic development, bringing this resource back online to serve our community. The image to the right is the Kimberly Apartments and is one of Charlotte's most distinctive and intact mid-century modernist apartment towers and is distinguished by its 6-story height, its massing, its architectural style, its high level of integrity, location, and ownership structure as a cooperative ownership structure. The area housing demand following the adjacent Park Road Shopping Center's 1956 completion inspired Godley Construction Company to plan and erect the Kimberly Apartments, per the design of the prolific Charlotte architecture firm Charles Morrison Greer and Associates. The substantial and stylish apartment towers manifest Charlotte's rapid mid-century growth and illustrates that we have for decades been a city in love with the future. Many of you may actually say, well, how could that be historic? I remember when it was built. But a large part of the significant architecture in our community does come from this mid-century time frame of rapid growth and expansion. Moving on, the Stafford Holcomb Farm possesses special historical and architectural significance in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County due to its agricultural function from the late 18th century through the mid-20th century and retention of a complement of buildings ranging from a timber frame dwelling that you see on the left that has since been wrapped in brick, a log slave quarters that eventually was turned into a tenant house, and outbuildings erected from the early 19th century through 1960s. We estimate that the image on the right of the screen may be the last remaining structure that can be directly associated with enslavement in Mecklenburg County. Chairman Hughes?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So as you're starting to, hopefully starting to realize some of the critical preservation work that we do in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and our region, that we use public funds to actually facilitate. And one of the things that's important to us is that you guys hold us accountable in that way. Just like you guys ask your constituents to hold you accountable, bring things to your attention, we ask the same of you guys so that we can be mindful of the work that we're doing and intentional about what we're doing. One of the focuses that we have is making sure that we deploy our resources in an equitable fashion. And the next property that we have on the list is the Brooklyn-McCrory Branch YMCA, which is historically significant and has been the center for Charlotte's African American community, and most particularly from 1951 until 1969. The site served as the community resource for education, recreation, business development, and was a vibrant black community in Charlotte that thrived as a city within a city during the Jim Crow era. With decades of contributions to the Charlotte's black community, the Brooklyn-McCrory Branch YMCA represents a progressive chapter in the city's history. The building is among the earliest African-American branches of the Young Men's Christian Association network in the Carolinas. Completed in 1951, the Brooklyn-McCrory Branch YMCA facility promoted Charlotte's early civil rights era by providing community programs and forums to promote social equity. Next, we have the Stowe Cornelius Potts Barbershop building, which consists of 2 separately constructed brick storefronts joined by a community wall and facade. It's important because of its local, historical, cultural, and architectural significance. The west side storefront, which was built in 1923, was constructed by Stowe Cornelius Company, whose original shareholders included town founder R.J. Stowe and town namesake J.B. Cornelius. Constructed at some point between 1923 and 1938, the east side storefront has housed since 1960 the Potts Barbershop, generally regarded as the oldest ongoing business continuously owned or operated by an African-American entrepreneur in Cornelius, and perhaps in North Mecklenburg County. In 1972, Potts Barbershop became the town's first racially integrated barbershop. The Potts Barbershop building is also notable for its longstanding role as a prominent center of social activity for the town's male population and for its 60-year-old association with the family of Wilson Henry Potts, an early civic leader of the Smithfield community, which is one of the oldest African-American communities in North Mecklenburg County. Next, we have the list of additions for study recently submitted in 2021. Some of you are familiar with the Big M Stables. It's an impressive facility, basically uptown Charlotte, hidden right in the neighborhood of Druid Hills. Also, Matthews Chapel Church in Crestdale, WBT Transmission Facility, Montclair South, Johnston Farm in Berry Hill, 3112 Parkway Avenue in Enderley Park, 3601 East Independence, Sheffield Park, 3116 Country Club Drive in Plaza Hills, 801 East 8th Street, 1st Ward, 500 Clement Avenue in Elizabeth. The Historic Landmarks Commission study list is composed of a number of properties that have been identified by staff, HLC commissioners, and the general public as potentially historic or significant in some way. In addition to the study list is the first step in evaluating designation potential, including outreach to property owners and the surrounding community to better understand the story of a place. Not all study list properties will be designated, though the list serves as an inventory from which the HLC can focus its efforts. As I mentioned, 9 properties were added in 2021. All those properties include houses, modernist office buildings, a church, a radio transmission center, and a horse corral and stable that is associated with the Black cowboy movement and culture. So again, just to reiterate, some of the ways in which you guys can continue to help us is to make sure that your constituents know about the work that we do so they can continue to bring these jewels of their own communities to us so that we can continue to document and study and potentially designate. Next, we have one of our newest releases and our newest projects, which is our updated and revamped Facebook page. The HLC has newly revamped our Facebook page, and our list of followers is growing pretty rapidly. You can find us there, like us there, and also share that again with your constituents. It's a simple way to stay up to date on some of the work that we're doing, learn about various historic places in your neighborhoods, and engage in our programs and events. We are very grateful for our partners in the county public information department and helping facilitate this exciting outlet of communications for the HLC, and especially proud of one of our own staff members, Elizabeth Stewart, who keeps the interesting stories fresh and going. At this time, I'd like to pass it back over to Mr. Thompson.
Over more than 3 decades of our work, the Historic Landmarks Commission has designated 42 properties that historically date from before the American Civil War. And many of these properties are tied in some way to the tragedy of African and African American enslavement. The research methods and resources that were used in the past to document the history of these places were often limited or even misguided by the social or cultural inequities that our community has struggled with right up into the 21st century. Last year, the staff of the Historic Landmarks Commission launched a program to intentionally research the story of each of these places to ensure that, to the best of all new and previously overlooked resources are available, the story of enslavement and the legacy of trauma and injustice will be accurately detailed. This intentional approach will take time, and it is our hope that the results will be a better account of our community's history. Next, a program that we initiated in 2021 was an effort to help date historic buildings when we did not know a construction date. We've got an old house sitting somewhere. We don't know exactly when it was built. We know it was important because of its association with individuals, families, et cetera. So the term dendrochronology comes to mind, and I'll ask you to think back to when you were a kid and you were out playing in the woods and there was a tree stump that had been cut down, and you count the tree rings, right? And you count the tree rings to tell how old the tree was when it was cut down. That tree was used to construct a historic house maybe 200 years ago. So the images you see are of students from the University of Louisville that are taking core samples of timbers actually from the Stafford slave cabin to help pinpoint a date of its construction. Scientists will look at the profile of the tree rings. They'll identify when certain storm events happen based on the profile of those tree rings, align that with historic information of climate, and be able to pinpoint with a high level of accuracy the date of these buildings. So that's a really exciting program that we have. We are a staff of 3. We're the smallest county department. We are small but mighty. And we're only mighty because of the support we get from our partners in the county organization. That includes our partners at Park and Rec, who oversee a number of historic landmarks, our partners at Louisa, who help us with permitting issues, asset and facility management that helps us with project management of our major projects that we undertake. We have agreements with 6 municipal jurisdictions to serve as their landmarks commission. And we also work with nonprofits at the state and local level as well. Our customers include homeowners and families. They include entire neighborhoods. They include churches and cemeteries, many of which are struggling now as our culture changes. Our partners are also the developers in our community, through adaptive reuse, taking our cotton mills and changing them into vibrant new uses. And again, I'd like to remind you to be proud of the largest landmark inventory of any county in the state of North Carolina. Thank you for having us tonight, and we appreciate the opportunity to share our work with you.
So thank the two of you for being here to present your annual report. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Mr. Hughes. I remember when he came on the commission, he was a young man then. He's showing some gray now.
Just a little. It's cold.
Probably was the youngest person on the commission at that time. But congratulations on your ascension to the chairmanship.
Thank you so much.
All right, any questions?
Say one thing.
Commissioner Meyer.
I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, where we celebrate history and preserve buildings with, not many problems. So thank you for what you do, because Charlotte needs you. I appreciate it. That's just from the bottom of my heart.
I also want to thank you for your work. I zoomed into some of your meetings when you were going over the whole history of the Dellwood Center, and I really appreciate how in-depth you are and all the things that you have to work on. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, again, thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
At this time, the chair will turn it over to our county manager for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several items under my report this evening, the first of which is a project update on the historic Latta Place project. And with that, I will ask Lee Jones, our Director of Park and Recreation, and Liz Morrell, our Park Manager, to come up and make the presentation.
Good evening. Thank you, Manager DiOrio, Chair Dunlap, Vice Chair Powell, commissioners, and staff. Back in June of 2021, we came to this board with an announcement that we had opted not to renew our annual performance agreement with Historic Latta Place, Inc. And we said we were going to move forward with a project to revisit Latta. And that included a site overview, the scope of a project, site assessment, establishing some project stakeholders, and a project timeline. And that was in September of 2021. Tonight, we're going to provide you with an update, and that's going to be handled by our very own Dr. Elizabeth Morrell. She's our Senior Management Analyst and also our Historic, Cultural, and Community Resources Manager. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Liz.
Thank you, Lee, for that introduction, and good evening, Chair Dunlap, Vice Chair Powell, Commissioners, Manager Diorio, and staff. I'm really looking forward to sharing some updates with you today regarding our progress on the Historic Latta Revisited project. Next slide, please. So as Lee mentioned, and as you may recall, the county opted not to renew its contract with the Historic Latta Inc. nonprofit back in June of 2021. Since that time, county staff and community partners have completed the first of a three-phase project, the end goal of which is to reopen the site to the public. On the right side of this slide, you can see the three project phases. We have recently completed phase 1, discovery, and we are now ready to embark on phase 2. Tonight, I will be discussing project elements by phase as we go through the presentation. So we have assembled a team of community partners who are diverse in terms of both their demography and their areas of expertise. This group includes representatives from the organizations that are listed here, and we have worked together to complete the tasks identified in the discovery phase. Some of these partners reached out to the county to volunteer their time and expertise, while others were recruited to fill identified needs. One of the first tasks that our group embarked upon was the development of a mission statement for the Latta site. Our mission includes 5 values, which are listed at the top. These values were driven by partner and public feedback, and they are truth, transparency, compassion, transformation, and unity. Our mission, which I will now read aloud, is as follows. Latta Place, we believe it is our duty to tell the truth. We resolve to practice transparency in all that we do. We are dedicated to providing a transformational and engaging experience featuring holistic storytelling filled with truth and empathy, an educational experience giving voice to a multitude of historical perspectives, a bridge between the past and present through historical interpretation, an essential resource to the residents of the greater Charlotte-Mecklenburg community and beyond, a visit that inspires self-examination and application of knowledge, a hub for the promotion of historical research and peer-reviewed scholarship, and finally, a welcome to all visitors with the intent of fostering dignity while respecting the natural environment in which Latta Place is located. And you'll also note that we have changed the site name from Historic Latta Plantation to Latta Place. This is a historically accurate moniker according to archival research conducted by committee members. Next, I'm going to share with you some results of a statistically valid survey that we conducted in December of 2021. The goal of this survey was to ascertain county residents' level of familiarity with and reactions to the historic Latta site. The first question that we asked our 917 respondents was, prior to this survey, had you heard of historic Latta located in Mecklenburg County? As you can see on the left side of the slide, nearly 70% of respondents indicated that they had in fact heard of historic Latta. We then asked the respondents if they had also visited historic Latta within the past year. As you can see in the pie chart on the right, approximately 2/3 of those who indicated that they had heard of the site, or 55% of total respondents, indicated that they had in fact visited the site within the past year. So we wanted to dig a little bit deeper, and so for those respondents who had visited the site, we also asked them to reflect on their experiences and their thoughts. Key themes outlined here include, first of all, historic Latta is located within the broader Latta Nature Preserve, and a lot of our respondents just mentioned that they really enjoy the lovely setting, that they like hiking, horseback riding, kayaking, and other outdoor recreational amenities that the preserve offers. Many stated that they had a positive experience overall with historic Latta, that they enjoyed the programming and the educational opportunities. Some also shared that they experienced uncomfortable feelings during their visit, including sadness, somberness, and a general feeling of being unsettled. And then a few remarked that they did not enjoy their visit because of the content's ties to American chattel slavery being defined as when the enslaved individual is legally rendered the personal property of his or her owner. Some quotes illustrating the diversity of responses are listed here. I'm going to read several of these quotes and then pause momentarily to allow the audience and commissioners to read them. One respondent remarked, "Nicely done local plantation experience, but it did not tell the whole story of slavery on plantations." Another remarked, "It's a typical plantation experience. Need to know more about slave ownership that took place there." For those respondents who indicated that they had not visited the site, we asked them why. As noted on this slide, many of the respondents indicated barriers such as lack of knowledge, lack of proximity to the site, or lack of interest. Also, as you can see on the last bullet point here, a notable set of respondents indicated discomfort with the idea of visiting a plantation or a former plantation. Here you can see some representative quotes, which also illustrate a diversity of viewpoints. I'll read several and then again pause momentarily to allow you to review. One respondent remarked, "I don't go to plantations because I don't approve of slavery and do not wish to celebrate our horrible history." Another person remarked, "Oh, I have no idea. I just haven't gone. It's not close, really." So you can see there's a variety of reasons why individuals may not have visited the site. The next portion of the discovery phase of this initiative was benchmarking. Benchmarking involved visits to 11 sites of former enslavement in South Carolina, Louisiana, and Virginia, and revealed the following key operational insights. First of all, storytelling about life at these former plantations is key and should incorporate a variety of perspectives, especially those perspectives of enslaved individuals and the indigenous. Secondly, programming should cater to a variety of learning styles and preferences so that all can benefit. Staff training is critical, and I've listed several topics here, including customer service, public engagement, de-escalation, crowd management, and personal wellness and self-care. A recurring theme was that due to the emotional nature of content covered at sites of historical enslavement, providing opportunities for debrief and wellness management for both staff and customers visiting the site is critical. As you can imagine, there are numerous potential activities that could occur at this site from a programming and special event standpoint. Our interpretive master plan consultant, which I'll talk about a bit in a moment, will assist us with the prioritization of how we want to go about implementing those possibilities from a time perspective. And then finally, desirable site attributes include public art that is reflective of the site's mission, spaces for reflection, and a gift shop. Here are some photos showing window refurbishment at the main house at Latta. This is one of several ongoing and planned maintenance projects that has occurred recently at the site while it has been closed to the public. Other projects include tree maintenance and connection to city water. Beginning this month, our committee's focus has shifted from discovery to research or blueprinting. This is phase 2 of the Historic Latta Revisited initiative, and it will consist of 4 major components, which are listed here. The first of these is an interpretive master plan, the goal of which is to assist with the development of storylines and program content for the site, as well as strategies for delivering that content. The scope of work, in addition to interpretive theme development, includes a phased implementation plan. Key in that will be accompanying budgetary and staffing needs. The request for proposals is open for that right now and will close on March 24th. In addition to this interpretive master plan, we'll be conducting some archival research in partnership with local universities and HBCUs across the state. This will involve locating and documenting primary and secondary sources relating to the historical time period in question in and around the historic Latta site. You can see the results of some of our initial archival work here on the right side of this slide. This is a district map of the Hopewell Plantation District in northern Mecklenburg County. All of the sites where enslaved people lived that we know of are marked with numbers on this map, and they include historic Latta is one of them. In addition to archival research and the interpretive master plan, we'll be working on collecting oral histories to supplement our data. Part of this will be the identification and recruitment of elders within the community who are willing to share their stories and oral histories with us. We'll also be doing a public invitation to share stories related to historic Latta and to help inform the project. Phase 3 is implementation. As you can see here, the site reopening is projected for FY23. We'll be looking forward to sharing more details with you as we go on in this process. There's a photo here of the main house at Latta that was taken this past summer. I thank you all for your time and welcome any questions.
All right, thank you. Let me remind my colleagues that this is the first of many reports we will hear. No action is required. You also have the opportunity to reach out to Park and Rec if there are any particular concerns. So before we move on, are there any burning questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Under benchmarking, can you explain or describe it a different way of the personal wellness and self-care?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So as part of the benchmarking, myself and Lee and other members of the committee had conversations with staff from other similar sites. And one of the things that they talked about is, like I mentioned, some of the content and most of the content is emotional. It can be upsetting and it can even be traumatic. And so because of that fact, every single one of them said that just providing a space for reflection, for debrief, for vulnerability, and then for staff self-care, giving them some time maybe at the end of a shift to debrief and discuss the happenings of that day was critical.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Is there nothing else, Madam Manager?
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Lee. Appreciate it. The next item under my manager's report tonight is an update on teacher bonuses for our MEC pre-K teachers. I'm going to ask Tim Gibbons, who's our program coordinator from DSS, to come to the podium and discuss that with you. This is not an action item for the board. This is for information and awareness for the community, but Tim will talk more about that.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to Chairman Dunlap, Vice Chair Powell, all of the commissioners, and County Manager Diorio for having me here tonight to give a brief overview for our plan to better recognize and support our MEC pre-K teachers. So I wanted to first kind of lay the scene. I think, as everyone's aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to pretty significant staffing challenges, both in the school-age educational space, but especially in the early childhood educational space. So recently, what we've seen locally, CMS had approved bonuses, I believe, back in December, which were up to $2,500 for full-time staff and up to $1,250 for part-time staff, focused especially on rewarding and recognizing their teachers and staff members, but also to promote retention and recruitment. Last Tuesday, the CMS board convened and voted to approve an increase to that plan where they doubled that bonus proposal for their staff members. So they increased those payouts up to $5,000 for full-time staff and up to $2,500 for part-time staff. What I've also laid out on that slide on the right-hand side for you as well is the payment structure to deliver those bonuses out, which are meant to be paid in 4 installments. The first of which went out in December of 2021, the second of which is scheduled for this month, and you can see the third and fourth scheduled for September and November. Now, in parentheses next to those dates, what I've identified there is what the required start date is for employees to be eligible for those payments. So if you look at that payment back in December, employees had to have started on October 31st or earlier to be eligible for that initial bonus payout. So what we are aiming to do with MEC Pre-K is to provide an equivalent incentive to our teachers. And the two key things I'd like to highlight with that: first, MEC Pre-K, our teachers are a professionalized workforce. They meet educational requirements like any other teachers in Mecklenburg County, and they have the same licensure requirements as any other teachers in Mecklenburg County. And secondly, as a matter of policy from the start, we've always sought to align our salary and wage scale with CMS teachers as well. So our lead teachers are paid on the exact same years of experience and scale as CMS teachers, and our assistant teachers, their pay aligns with the wage scale there also. So what we are proposing for our MEC Pre-K teachers is really a structure that's meant to maintain parity between our MEC Pre-K teachers and the CMS staff, and also to align with the updated CMS bonus structure. So what I've laid out here is what we are proposing is to pay out bonuses over a 3-installment phase. The first of which, what we're sort of identifying as a recognition for the work the teachers have done throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and also to promote retention with that existing workforce into fiscal year 23. Now, if you remember from the previous slide, CMS's payouts were in 4 installments. Because they already paid one in December, we're proposing to condense those first 2 installments into one payout in February. So that would be a payout for $2,000. The eligible recipients would be all of our current teachers who have started on or before February 1st of this school year, so 2022. And the total estimated cost for that initial payment is $420,000 across the entire workforce. Our second proposed payout in this structure would be for $1,500, and that would be paid out in September of 2022. And the eligible recipients for that payout would be all of our returning teachers from this current school year who started on or before May 1st of 2022. So the goal with this structure, again, is to really encourage retention of our teachers into fiscal year 23, to make sure we will reward and recognize those teachers, but also encourage them to come back so we maintain a qualified and experienced workforce. The total estimated cost on what we're projecting there would be roughly $283,000. And finally, the third payout in this bonus structure would be delivered in November 2022. That amount would also be $1,500 per teacher. The eligible recipients would be all teachers employed at that time in MEC Pre-K who started on or before October 1st of 2022. So the goal there, again, is to promote that retention of existing teachers, but also an incentive to recruit new teachers into the program with that bonus structure. And the estimated cost of that payout would be $315,000. So if you look at the bottom of the table as presented, you can see that we are matching, again, the total possible payout for our existing teachers who return next year would be that full $5,000 to match what CMS is doing. And the total estimated cost across all 3 payouts would be $1,018,500. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Again, this is for information only, just sharing with you what will happen in order to ensure that the bonuses are available to MEC Pre-K teachers.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I would like to ask a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Tim, thank you for the presentation. A couple of things. I think I'm a little disconnected on a couple of areas. Certainly would support bonuses. I mean, I think we need to really support our educators. I think everybody on this dais feels that same way. What I'd like to really understand is, number one, how do we know that bonus number is the right number? I mean, are we just arbitrarily throwing that? I know we said we doubled, but is there any communication with the educators so that we really understand what is it going to take to retain them? And then the second thing that I really want to understand, we know that there's an issue with educators in CMS and educators across the state and country that are not being compensated properly. And so is it right for us to be aligning with their pay scale? I mean, should we be exploring with our MEC Pre-K teachers, since they are credentialed the same way as CMS teachers, should we be looking at a different pay scale? And I don't know if you've got to come back to answer those, but I'm just really curious.
I'm happy to answer them both because I think the response might sort of answer both of those questions, and if I don't, please let me know. So I think first and foremost, one of the things with the start of the program and what we continue to do, we've got the word parity on the screen there, and we recognize that MEC Pre-K doesn't operate just in a silo in those cases. So when we talked about pulling this bonus structure together, when we talk about not only what's going on in CMS, we're also taking a look to see what can be done for the NC Pre-K teachers who are center-based and also all of our teachers who are center-based. So we coordinate, again, with our partners at Smart Start, also at CMS. So to that point, I think we started with these numbers and then looked to increase them to match what CMS was doing because we don't want to pit all of these programs in competition with one another and then start to see teachers cannibalize from one program to the other. So I think that's why we started with that number there. And then based, again, on our conversations with others, both we already know what CMS is doing. We feel NC Pre-K will match that. And if we can do that as well, all three of those programs would maintain parity. And I would say the answer is kind of the same when it comes to the salary and wage scale also. I think that would, again, former teacher myself, so totally understand where you're coming from there. But again, try to maintain that parity to make sure that all these programs are operating in sync. So it's not just what is MEC Pre-K doing, it's what as a community are we doing for early childhood education. So I think that's kind of why initially the program was started that way, and I think that's worked for us moving forward. And I don't think we've anticipated make any significant changes since.
Thank you. Commissioner Cotham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I guess I want to go back to when we started this several years ago. It was very obvious we did not have a lot of these certified preschool teachers in the area. And then I think UNC Charlotte decided to start offering courses in that. Is that continuing on?
Yeah, so we actually, in partnership with the Foundations for the Carolinas and the Charlotte Executive Leadership Council, are managing 2 private sector grants from philanthropic, businesses and others to help put people through. We have a program with CPCC to get educators on that initial track to earn their associate's degree. And then if they want to enter directly into the professional workforce, they have that opportunity. But they also really encourage those folks who want to transition onto a 4-year college or university to get that bachelor's degree to become a lead teacher. And then we have a similar sister program with UNCC to prepare students to get that bachelor's degree and become lead teachers. So that grant funding covers both tuition, support services, transportation, books, materials, everything.
I know in the beginning, not all of the teachers had finished college because, first of all, it was impossible. Can you give us an idea about the percentage of them now who have completed a college degree?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and pull the exact numbers from our compliance staff.
Ballpark. Can you give me a ballpark?
80%, 90%.
All of our lead teachers are required to have a bachelor's degree.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
Thank you.
All of our lead teachers are required to have a bachelor's degree. So they've always had a bachelor's degree plus a BK license in addition to that.
Okay, all right. I kind of remember that now, that the lead teacher did. Are there any, assistants who get any bonuses? You say part-time, but I don't know if those are part-time teachers.
Yeah, so again, our structure is 1 lead teacher and 1 assistant teacher per classroom.
I'm sorry.
Apologies. So it's 1 lead teacher, 1 assistant teacher per classroom. So the structure of the bonuses, so the first one for all of our current teachers would include all of those teachers, both lead and assistant.
Okay, and I guess just to kind of finalize this, how is it working? Is it going to be able to keep teachers and attract them? Do you think you have a good plan here that it's going to work to attract teachers and keep them?
So, I think it is fairly critical and it would be highly successful. We're already hearing from our teachers. They see the news about what CMS is doing and they're already asking, why are we not matching? What are we doing there? So I think from a retention standpoint, it's going to be highly effective so they understand that they're treated the same as any other teachers and that we reward them like anywhere else. So we don't see we losing them to CMS or anywhere else in those places. And then again, for recruitment, again, we have a lot of aggressive efforts out there statewide to bring teachers in. Being able to let them know that there's a possible bonus, a sign-on bonus for $1,500 coming in November for those who join us is only going to strengthen our opportunity to bring highly qualified candidates into our pool.
Do you ask teachers if this is what they want? money, or do they want something else? Did you ever explore that?
The most common refrain that we hear so far, that we hear bubbling up all the time, going back to December, is CMS is doing bonuses, where are ours?
Okay, okay. All right, well, that's helpful. All right, well, thank you for answering my questions. That concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Altman.
So the $1 million, does that kind of break out to 203 teachers or so? Is it about 200 teachers?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different in each of the payments there. So in the first one, again, that's assuming we have 105 classrooms, so 2 teachers per classroom is 210. The second payment that, again, is really for returning teachers that are coming back from this current school year. We do apply a little bit of a retention factor to that, so we're estimating that number is going to be about 190 teachers. And then our third payment, again, we're assuming we'll be fully staffed up come November, so that would be for 200 teachers as well.
And can you give me an idea of the pay range so I can appreciate what $5,000 is relative to their overall compensation?
Yeah, so I believe lead teachers in their first year, so they have 0 years teaching on their license, is around $45,500. I'd have to go back and double check again exactly what's on that salary scale, but I believe years 1 and 2 are again around $45,000 to $46,000 for lead teachers. And then assistant teachers, what we've seen right now, the sort of median wage across the program is up to about $15.75, almost $16 an hour.
Thank you. And last question, I note that CMS has a full-time bonus and a part-time bonus. Do we only have a full-time bonus?
Yeah, we don't have any part-time employees there. One thing we are proposing with this first payout here in February, in this most recent update with the CMS board, they also voted to award these bonuses to guest teachers who have come in to fill spaces as they've had trouble staffing up. The first bonus that was structured did not include guest teachers. So we are proposing in this first payout in February, we've had a couple long-term subs who have been with us throughout the duration of the school year to fill vacancies that we've been unable to fill. So we are proposing to reward them that first bonus payout as well.
Thank you, and I'm very pleased.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes that report. Madam Manager.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. The next item under my report tonight is the process. We're going to ask the board to approve the process for selecting a temporary commissioner to fill the slot for Commissioner Ella Scarborough, who you accepted at your last meeting. You accepted her medical leave of absence. So one of the attachments actually goes through the process, and I'm just going to go through it very quickly. And if there's any questions, we could answer that. But we are looking for the board to approve this process so that we can move forward. So if you approve the process tonight, tomorrow, tonight you'll approve the process, then starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we will be accepting applications through the county clerk's office for people who are interested in applying for the position. We'll be accepting applications from qualified candidates through the media, the county's website, and the government channel. Applications are available on the county's website and by email, and so people can apply for a county commission spot from tomorrow, February 17th, until 5 p.m. Friday, February 25th. At 5 p.m. on Friday, February 25th, all completed applications with accompanying resumes must be submitted and received by the clerk of the board. Monday, February 28th through Tuesday, March 1, the clerk's office will verify each application is complete and meets the established qualifying criteria. On Wednesday, March 2nd, eligible applicants will be shared with the Board of County Commissioners. The county clerk's office, in partnership with Public Information, will issue a press release notifying the public who is eligible and submitted an application for consideration. On Tuesday, March 8th, at the Budget Public Policy meeting, the board will provide staff with 7 candidates to be interviewed. The candidates to be interviewed will be determined by a majority vote similar to an advisory board or commission nomination process, which you're all very familiar with. We will have a special board meeting on Saturday, March 12th, which will be an open public meeting. Candidate interviews to be conducted by the full Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners. This will be a called special meeting of the board, and the county manager, county attorney, clerk to the board, and deputy clerk to the board will be present. At the conclusion of the interviews, the board will conduct their deliberation, and each board member will announce their top 2 candidates for consideration, and the clerk's office will publish a list of the top candidates. On Tuesday, March 15th, which is a regular meeting, the board will vote to appoint a qualified candidate as a temporary replacement to fill the seat during the extended leave. On Tuesday, March 22nd, at a Budget Public Policy meeting, the individual selected and appointed to fill a vacancy will be sworn in by the chair and/or clerk to the board. And on Wednesday, March 23rd, the new replacement county commissioner will be onboarded and will be provided an orientation. So it's a very tight time frame, but because of the timing of all this, we wanted to move quickly.
All right. Let me first share that we had extensive discussion about this last time, and everybody had plenty of time to review this. So I want to see if we need to answer any questions and then move this. All right, Commissioner McDowell.
I would like to propose a change to the meeting date of March 12th to Friday, March 11th. I'm just not sure, if there was a particular reason to do it on Saturday.
Because usually people have commitments and other things on their schedules for Friday and be able to block that entire.
Could you speak up?
We did it on a Saturday because people have commitments during the week. It'll be hard to block out an entire day, and it may be hard for the candidates as well to be able to come and be interviewed on a weekday. So we're trying to be sensitive to everybody's needs.
I would still like to just propose a change to make it Friday, the 11th. I think people also have commitments on Saturdays, and it's just really tough. So I just offer that as a, I'm not quite sure if I need to make a motion for that or just a.
That's the state of the county, Chairman.
I'm sorry?
That's the date of the state of the county.
The 11th is?
Oh, we
11th of
can't do
March.
that. Yeah, that's the
okay.
state of the county address.
Yes, it is.
What
And
time?
all of you are expected to be in the chamber for that as well. So,
So could we roll it into one nice event? I mean, here's the thing, if we're going to be here anyway for your address on the 11th, why not have our
I agree.
interviews?
well, one of the reasons we took it down from 9 to 7 was because 9 were too many to interview in one day. And based on the schedule, I'm assuming that we're going to spend 30 to 45 minutes with each candidate and then have time to debate it. So it's going to take all day. It's going to be an all-day process. And so while I appreciate the discussion about changing the date, I think most people are probably okay with it, but I'll accept your motion to move it to another date, and then we'll vote it up or down.
Second.
So her motion is to change to the Friday before, which is March
11.
11th. It was moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion?
Could you just clarify, this is
This is the
removing
day
the
of the
Saturday?
interviews.
This is removing the Saturday?
Yeah, moving it to Friday. All right?
I would like to hear from Dina, the logistics of this, because it's huge.
Well, I think it is huge, and I think if we don't start until noon, on Friday, we're going to be here till 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. And so we picked Saturday because we've given people enough time to clear their calendars. It's going to be a full day. It allows the public to also view and be available if they're interested in listening to these interviews. It allows the media to be here. It just seemed like it made it a little bit more public and a little bit more transparent to do it on a Saturday than to do it a day during the week when it makes it just that much harder for people to get here.
All right, Commissioner Cotham, because we're going to move this item because it's either going to be that one of the 2 days.
I would just say that when we voted on this, those of us who have been around for a while, we talked about this was going to be a lot of time for the commissioners and for the staff. And so I expected it would be Saturday. And so, but we agreed to do it, so I would support Saturday. But we did say this was going to be a lot of time.
All right, so we know what our options are. Right now, there's a motion on the floor to move the interviews to Friday. All those in favor of that motion, let's see by show of hands. All opposed? All right, that fails. Is there a motion to adopt the recommended process as presented by the manager?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, let it be known by a show of hands. Thank you. That is unanimous, Madam Clerk.
Okay, then the next item under my manager's report this evening is our COVID-19 update, as well as the item around the face covering requirement. So I will turn it over to Dr. Washington to make his presentation. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. That's kind of weird with this right in front of my face, but I'm going to do my best. Good evening, Chair Dunlap, Commissioners, County Manager DiOrio. It is certainly my pleasure to always be here with you all to provide an update. I have a fair amount of information to go through this evening, so I'll just ask for your patience. And also, thank you to everybody for the continual feedback loop, both the community as well as others who have provided feedback to us over the last several weeks. I will start by saying a lot of what I'll share tonight we've been talking about for the last month relative to us turning the corner in our pandemic response. And I will be laying out and going through a number of updated sort of understandings. As we know throughout this entire pandemic, we've been learning. COVID-19 was not something we expected. And certainly, we've had to learn a lot throughout this pandemic. We've learned a whole ton, and I think we are at a pivotal point in our response, both locally across the state and across this country, that we must center many of our activities on those that are most important. So just before I begin talking about sort of where we go from here, I want to provide a quick update of where we were as just a few days ago. We are continuing to see pretty significant declines across all of our indicators that we have been tracking throughout this entire pandemic. You all are very familiar with these. The 7-day case rate is down by nearly 90%. Our hospitalizations are also continuing to fall. We are below 400 per day at this point, and we certainly have seen pretty significant declines in our percent positivity rate as well, which is down by roughly 60%. We are not seeing that same progress in vaccinations, which I'll talk a little bit more later, but we certainly have seen individuals are still coming in for both their first doses, second doses, as well as booster shots. I think there's a lot of shift in COVID conditions, not just here in Mecklenburg County, but across the state and really across the country, as I've already said in this presentation. There is also a global recognition or acknowledgement that it is very likely that COVID-19 will become endemic in not just America, but across the globe. This is a reality that we have been discussing for quite some time as it relates to COVID is here, and we must learn to adapt, adjust, to live with it. There are, of course, new variants that have emerged. There are more variants that will emerge. I don't anticipate, we're not on a pathway to eradication. So we don't have global vaccine equity. We certainly do not have enough preventive measures across the world to stop the spread of COVID-19 completely. So as a result of that, because of its continual transmission, we do expect and anticipate that we will see new variants emerging. The variants over time have evolved. They've gotten shorter in terms of their incubation period. We've also seen some increases in their transmissibility, which has resulted in many more cases, a lot more cases, in fact. But many of those cases, fortunately, are mild as a result of not just the transformation in the virus, but also as it relates to more immunity in our community as a result of vaccinations. Unfortunately, we are at a point in the pandemic because of a number of issues that I'll talk a little bit about tonight, that many of the infections that are occurring in the community are not counted by public health agencies, either us locally, statewide, or otherwise. And this is mostly because of, and this has been the case, I must admit, throughout the entire pandemic. Sorry, there's a face on the screen over here that's waving at me. So we are not able to count all the cases that are occurring. In fact, early on in the pandemic, there were a number of estimates that we were only counting roughly 5 to 10% of the cases. Because of now we have the availability of at-home tests, certainly we know that a larger proportion of cases are not going to be represented over time in our counts because of the fact that people are not going to report those to us. Those at-home tests are also not reportable as based on definitions and by guidance from the state and CDC, which I don't foresee changing because, in fact, there's a lot of liability or a lot of risk associated with trying to count stuff that people do at home. And so that is going to become a problem, and it has become a problem more increasingly for us here locally, and we can see a huge divergence between our percent positivity and our case counts because of the variations of variabilities that we're seeing in our testing demand. The last point relative to conditions that I think is certainly encouraging and is important and central to our proposal to really transition our response is that we do have wide availability of vaccines for most people in our community. We are expecting that vaccines for the under 5 population will be available. We thought it would be available next week.
Let me just share with you that being rude means that this process will be longer. We expect decorum, and if you can't abide by that, then we would ask you to excuse yourself.
As I noted, we have wide availability of vaccines in the community as well as treatment options. We have a number of additional options coming online, and then we do have the availability of high-quality masks to protect individuals, as well as there is wide availability of testing in the community here across the state and across the country. These conditions are largely what have led me to our recommendations this evening related to us making a transition to what I'm going to call, for purposes of convenience, COVID Response 2.0. So at this time, I'm going to outline a number of areas that are critical for us as we move forward in this response. As said for the last month, we are reaching a corner that we have to turn relative to how we respond to COVID and really normalize its existence in our community and do everything possible to protect against those critical, severe outcomes and protect the most vulnerable in our community. And that remains important, it remains central, and that remains the focus of what we do in public health here and statewide. Let me start with surveillance. As I've already described to you all, case counts are becoming more unreliable for us. Doesn't mean they're not useful. It doesn't mean that percent positivity does not tell us something. But those metrics are becoming less reliable as the proportion of cases that we can count is getting much lower. As well as the reality is, on the horizon as it relates to what metrics we use across the country for determining community transmission, I do anticipate there will be some changes in those recommendations in the very near future. We have worked, and I must give credit to the state of North Carolina for all of the surveillance systems that we do have in place. There is a lot of local efforts, and shout out to our partners at UNC Charlotte, who have really been leading the way in wastewater surveillance in this community across the state. They've been doing this on campus in their residence halls. It's pretty incredible how this process works, but I won't go into all the science, but suffice it to say they take samples from sewer water, and they're able to measure the level of COVID-19 in the water that has come from people's residences. So wastewater surveillance is one appropriate and helpful tool, which I'll show some data around that in just a second. The second tool that is useful that we use for other public health conditions and has always been helpful for us in the work that we do with flu, for example, is syndromic surveillance of emergency department visits. And this allows us to be able to detect on a daily basis how many individuals are coming to our emergency departments with COVID-like illness. It is not a perfect measure, as no measure is perfect, but it has tracked very well over the course of the Omicron surge, giving us pretty good confidence that it will be a helpful metric as we move ahead, particularly as early indicators so that we can advise the public to know that COVID surges may be on the way. And lastly, I'll just note we are continuing our genetic sequencing to ensure that we're monitoring for new variants. This graph, I won't go into great detail, but this 3 lines on this graph show you the testing volume is the green line, the blue line is the case rate per 100,000, and then the percent positivity is the red line. Without spending too much time here, I just want you to make the point that we have seen that divergence that we anticipated, again, as testing demand testing demand from providers in the community that's reportable has changed so dramatically over the last several weeks to months. In terms of wastewater surveillance, we do have 4 stations in Mecklenburg County that covers approximately 370,000 residents in the community. This is measured a little bit differently. It's measured in terms of percentiles. You can see from this graph, as of the 9th, we are, all the 4 sites in Mecklenburg County are in fact in the lowest levels of percentiles, which is a very good sign that the transmission here in Mecklenburg County has waned pretty significantly. That is not the case across the entire state, as you can see by the counties that stations still have the orange and red indicators. Over the course of the last several weeks, we have been working, months, I'm sorry, we have been working to, I think it was something up there. We have been working to monitor how well wastewater surveillance tracks with case rates, because that helps us understand the reliability of this metric. I knew this was going to be an eventful night. It helps us to be able to track the reliability of this metric over time, particularly as it relates to how it corresponds to cases in the community. As you can see from these graphs, again, I won't spend a lot of time, but the green line shows you, the green line and the dots show you the detection of wastewater, of viral particles in wastewater. And the gray bars show you exactly how those have corresponded to case rates in the community in those neighborhoods where the substations are. You see pretty tight concordance between these two metrics, which creates a lot of confidence that this will be an important tool for us to understand when COVID cases are beginning to surge in the community. Moving forward to community resources. Community resources has always been a central part in making sure that these resources are available to all in our community and to make sure that we have equal access to folks who need to be able to access things to make decisions themselves and to help protect themselves as it relates to their risk of COVID. Testing, of course, is one of those essential resources. We do have no-cost testing widely available at this time. We are working to make sure we are able to continue to prioritize that resource for those at greatest risk and to make sure that we have as many self-tests available in the community at no cost for individuals so that they're able to test themselves and make decisions. We're also working very diligently to establish a surge testing plan. As I mentioned earlier, we do expect future surges. Our testing system did not survive very well during the Omicron surge because of the very high demand. So we will be working very diligently to make sure with our testing partners that we're adequately prepared for mass testing sites for future surges. In terms of treatment, there's a lot of great news on the treatment horizon. Obviously, there are monoclonal antibodies available in Mecklenburg. There was another one made available just this week. There are oral therapies available as well, and these are being reserved at this time for the highest risk patients, but we do expect additional supply in the future. And lastly, I'll say the masks are available. The CDC was actually relaxed guidelines on the use of medical grade masks, which had been in place for most of the pandemic, which thereby made them available to all. And as a result of that, we've seen pretty large distribution of these high quality masks, both by our local providers, including the health department, the state, as well as the federal government. I'll take a moment and just acknowledge the great work of the health department team, who I should always acknowledge because they have been doing a lot of work over the last several months in planning for this discussion this evening. We have, though, however, distributed more than 220,000 medical grade masks mostly since the beginning of January. And as you all know, we have also been distributing a large number of rapid test kits, and we've distributed more than 67,000 of those since December of last year. I also note our partners at Atrium Health continue to make medical grade masks available in the community and have distributed more than 1 million themselves, which is great because those in our community who may not be able to afford them or find them are able to get them at no cost. Shifting now to talk a bit about prevention. I want to make sure we all understand that vaccination remains the most important and leading public health strategy for prevention of COVID and its severe impacts on our community and individuals' lives. And so vaccinations will remain central to our discussion and an important part of the work that we do as a public health department and a community. We have not seen, and as I alluded to earlier, the same level of uptake that we would like to see, given that we have not achieved extremely high levels of vaccination here yet. And so we really are reimagining our vaccination outreach efforts to ensure that we're doing everything possible to make sure that folks have the education, the information, and access as it relates to vaccines. That is also true for our booster doses. We are observing some differences in terms of who is coming in for a booster dose versus who isn't, and are working to make sure that we are aligning our resources and investing appropriately to make sure all in our community are aware that they need a booster and that they are able to come in and get it. As I've already talked to you all about, again, as a part of this plan to really transition our response, universal case investigation and contact tracing is also no longer optimal in the work that we do. The state also advised us in January that we were able to end those processes for the general public. We were previously required to do so. The state also advised that K-12 schools also end this same process, as well as quarantine for asymptomatic students, effective Monday of next week, the 21st. I do expect that the state will also release guidance later this week for providing similar guidance for childcare facilities that will help inform them, to transition them to this not having universal contact tracing or quarantining or exclusion, as sometimes referred to, for asymptomatic children. Public health continues, our communicable disease team continues to manage clusters and outbreaks in high-risk settings, including our long-term care facilities and our shelters. And those are continuing to be a critical aspect of what we see. We had a large number of outbreaks during Omicron in long-term care facilities, but the great work of those facilities and our staff, we had very low levels of transmission within facilities, and not very few, if any, deaths. All right, appropriate wearing of mask certainly offers protection, particularly high-quality mask offers protection for individuals who are at risk of infection. It is clear to all of us that cloth face coverings are less protective, particularly against more transmissible variants. Universal masking here in the county, specifically that informed by mandate or Board of Health rule, we did see clear impacts during the Delta surge, which I shared during the last meeting. This difference was not observed during the Omicron surge, largely because of a number of reasons I noted the last time that I won't go through in great detail, but certainly the quality of mask influences that. At this time, the CDC recommends universal masking in any community that has a high or substantial level of community transmission based on their current metrics. I do anticipate at some point in the very near future, those metrics will change. And at this time, though, we are still in that period of high and substantial transmission, but I do expect, as I said earlier, updated recommendations very soon. Our team put together a couple of projections on both the percent positivity and the case rate to help us understand or project when we may reach a level of low or substantial community spread. And based on those projections, and again, this is based on data as of, I believe, the 13th, we are expecting that we will hit that mark for substantial community spread by March the 2nd. That's just a couple of weeks from now. We are also expecting that we'll hit the case rate mark for substantial spread by March the 4th. And again, these are rough estimates, but certainly they could go faster or they could go slower. So with that, the recommendation currently tonight, I'm asking the board to consider revoking the current Board of Health rule that requires indoor face coverings in Mecklenburg County. This revocation will be effective February the 26th because this is a Board of Health rule and the state regulations do require us to notice this rule change or repeal for at least 10 days. And so the effective date will be February the 26th. If you will vote on this evening. I have outlined a number of considerations that are important to us that help us make this decision. I recognize that there's a lot of noise about what's going on in the country and across the world, but we have tried our best to make sure that we're being informed by what the conditions are here, and of course acknowledging that those conditions are starting to shift, and it is time for us to make a transition in our response. I continue to encourage people to wear a mask, particularly those who are in our community who are more vulnerable. There are a lot of people in our community who have underlying health conditions, who are immunocompromised, in which case COVID is a very serious threat. It is a threat to their life. And I don't want to underscore or to not give credence to that reality for a lot of our residents who live in those conditions, that is important for people to wear a mask to protect each other. Those individuals, I believe, will have to take responsibility for sure among themselves to make sure they are wearing masks to protect themselves, particularly high-quality masks that offer the greatest level of protection when they're out in public settings, particularly those that are indoors. There are a couple of conditions that are a couple of settings where there are other rules that govern the requirement for individuals to wear face coverings that are not relevant, that are separate from the county's mask mandate. That includes certain healthcare settings, which are governed by the OSHA rule, and there's also a public transit, including airports and airplanes, that's required by TSA. I do also, as I mentioned earlier, I really do encourage strict adherence to mask wearing for those in our community who are high risk and those who live in high risk settings like shelters and detention centers. And especially those individuals who might be leaving isolation early because they're asymptomatic or their symptoms have improved. It is still very important that those individuals wear masks for those day 5 to 10 because they are very likely infectious and could potentially spread the infection to others. Lastly, I'll talk about K through 12 and childcare settings. I am continuing to recommend to the schools as well as the child care facilities to follow the guidance that's been issued to them by the State Department of Health and Human Services as well as the Department of Public Instruction. Those institutions, I imagine, will make some updates to their guidance around universal masking in the near future as well. But I do think it's important, and I've shared with our education partners and our team is having a number of conference calls and town halls this week with both our public and private schools, that they establish plans now to transition to a mask optional environment in the schools. I recognize some folks think it's just, one and done kind of thing and you just get rid of them, but there are some controls that need to be put into place, particularly for kids and other staff and others who come back to school early from isolation that may very well be infectious. So there are processes and they need to communicate quickly what those plans will be, because I do believe even if no additional guidance changes, we will be at that point in the next 2 weeks. I do plan to join the Board of Education at their meeting next Tuesday and share these recommendations, as well as ensure that I answer whatever questions might be might be important at that time. Lastly, I just want to say I know that this is probably difficult for a lot of people in a lot of ways, but we are moving forward, and I do believe that we will continue to monitor what's happening in the community. We will continue to advise and alert the community as it relates to what's happening with COVID. The pandemic is not over. COVID is still a real threat to the community. There are people dying every day. So it is important for us to continue to take every measure to protect life in the community. But I do think that there's a way to be more focused in that, specifically related to ensuring that we're making sure that all of our focus is on vaccination and boosters and making sure that those in our community who need them have them. It's also clear to me, and I think many others in the public health community, that future community-wide mitigation measures really will be informed by the severity of impact of COVID surges, specifically with the focus on the most severe outcomes, including hospitalization, long-term illness, and death. On the left-hand side of this slide, there's a quote from many of our colleagues across the country, big cities, that we sent a letter to the federal government, really sort of encouraging them to act in this space. And it really is time for us to empower the public to act if they suspect that they have a COVID infection, to do the right thing, to isolate, to notify their contacts, and of course, to make the decisions to protect their health, good decisions to protect their health. So with that, I'll remind folks that we are available to answer questions, and I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Washington, for your presentation. Let me share with the public how we'll progress at this point. I have a list of names of all of those of you who have signed up in advance. I will call your names, and I'll call at least 3 of you at a time. As you come down, one will take the podium, and you will remain about 6 feet apart until such time that the other names are called. You have up to 3 minutes, and let me just share with you that outburst from the audience takes time away from the speaker. The clock will not stop ticking. I want to make sure everybody understands that. All right, so the first 3 people who have an opportunity to speak, Maggie Franklin, Jennifer Greer, and Stacy Staggs. Madam Clerk, is there a timer on the podium?
Yes.
Just right here.
Okay, well, you'll get up to 3 minutes, and if you go past that, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right?
My name is Maggie Franklin, and Commissioners, it is my opinion that this board has lost sight of the authority they hold and have taken on the mindset of the ruling elite. In the past 23 months, we have seen a gross mishandling of power. We, the people, have been lied to and manipulated, and I'm here to tell you that enough is enough. As the COVID narrative collapses and data proves that facts and figures regarding the infection and death rates were wildly misstated, the continued masking of our community showcases the hypocrisy of our leaders. Our community is waking up to the perverse motives of the highest-ranking elected officials, and it's my opinion that there's an obvious trickle-down effect into our very own community. What has become clear is that you underestimate your constituents. As the scientific data reflects, we are past the point of a public health crisis. Governor Cooper lifted the mask mandate for North Carolina 278 days ago, but this committee continues to stand in the way of progress. You have used this virus to strip away our liberties and boost your sense of control and dictatorship. We heard last week that Dr. Washington might lift the mask mandate due to declining numbers. Why would the numbers be declining? COVID hasn't gone away. The science hasn't changed. It's the reporting requirements that have changed. On January 6th, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced that effective February 2nd, it will retire the requirement to report the previous day's COVID deaths, hospitalizations, laboratory-confirmed cases, and many other previously required fields. You can view this information at healthdata.gov. With revised reporting requirements, along with the free home test kits the government is supplying, it's no wonder we've seen a rapid decline in COVID numbers, just in time for the midterm elections. Coincidence? It is my opinion that this board is grasping at the last scraps of control they feel is within their power to maintain their relevance. What's disgusting is that the control you choose to grip onto is that over our children. You bully our children into submission through coercion. If you don't wear a mask, you can't go to school. You can't play sports. You can't see your friends. You can't. You are teaching our children to fall in line or else. Look at the hypocrisy. The Charlotte Hornets play unmasked while our children are forced to play the same game with masks. Citizens of every age are allowed to sit maskless at a restaurant to eat their meal, but the same rule does not apply to the school desk. Tell me, commissioners, what makes a dining table different from a school desk? I'll tell you, money. As of February 1st, the COVID hospitalization and death statistics for children in Mecklenburg County was less than 1%, whereas the increase of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and suicidal ideation continues to rise at alarming rates. North Carolina's childhood suicide rate has risen by over 50% since 2019. It is not up to our children to protect the adults who have the tools and treatments they need to protect themselves. It is time for the board to stop bullying our children into submission and lift the mask mandates for our schools. Thank you.
Melissa Easley, you're on deck after Stacy Staggs.
Ready?
You can start. Yes.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jenny Greer, and I have 2 daughters in CMS. My intention here tonight is twofold: to speak in the energy of love, not anger, and to show how our current plan is actually doing more harm than good. I typically don't like getting involved in politics, to be honest, but after hearing about the meeting and listening to it a couple of weeks ago, I knew it was time to speak up. And unfortunately, masks are political. In North Carolina, the 76 school districts that initially mandated face masks are counties where Biden won. The other 39 mask optional districts are counties Trump won. When science differs by county, it's not science, it's politics. We are playing a game of political football, and our kids are losing. It is time we move away from this one-size-fits-all policy. So here are some facts from documented medical sources. There is almost no difference in transmission rates in Mecklenburg County versus mask-optional counties. High-quality, one-way masking N95 is more effective at protecting the vulnerable than universal use of low-quality masks. If you wear an N95 mask, there is no additional protection if others around you are wearing one. Cloth masks have an increased risk of infection in healthy individuals. Cloth and surgical masks have been found to only be 10 to 12% effective. Children are at a greater risk of dying from car accidents, suicide, or drowning than COVID. If the aim is to save children's lives, other inventions like enhanced pool safety would be much more effective. The mental health costs associated with requiring children to wear a mask in school are real. Masking increases anxiety and depression, which are already up 200% in this pandemic. Calls for the removal of masks in schools have been increasing in recent days. National media outlets, governors across several states have lifted it. Several North Carolina school districts and Charlotte private schools have all recently lifted mask mandates. It is time to allow us the same opportunities you have afforded yourselves. With just a quick glance at your social media sites, the majority of you, all but 2 to be exact, have pictures showing you indoors in a group without a mask in the last 2 months. I commend you for using your power of personal choice, and there's no judgment there. Maybe you took it off for a second just to take a picture, but you did what you thought was best despite the mask mandate. Now allow us parents to do the same for ourselves and our children. Mandating masks is increases fear, harms the healthy, and does not provide extra protection to the vulnerable. We need to reverse this. Do no harm to the healthy and protect the vulnerable. And the only way to do this is to make masks optional for all and encourage the vulnerable to wear N95 masks. COVID is here to stay, and reclaiming normal life for our kids is the best way to support and protect them. It is time to call a timeout in this game of political football and do what is best for all. Please rescind the county mask mandate and support removing the mandate for our children. Thank you.
Tracy Staggs. Virtual. Okay, Ms. Staggs?
Hello, I'm attending virtually. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank you all for the option to attend virtually, as I would not be safe returning to my immune-compromised children from a gallery. It's 95% unmasked. Chairman Dunlap, I'm concerned about suspending the mask mandate prior to the vote and prior to the effective date of the recommendation by Dr. Washington. I also want to make a note that I think, I'm sure unintentionally, Dr. Washington has overstated the vaccination uptake in Mecklenburg County. In fact, children aged 0 to 4 have 0%. They're not yet eligible. Children who are 5 to 11 in Mecklenburg County are sitting at 31% vaccine uptake. Kids who are 12 to 17 who've had access to the vaccines longer are at 59%, and none of that is near the 80% goal that would protect the youngest amongst us. I want you all to consider who you're helping and who you're hurting. Lifting the mask mandate adds risk and thus hurts children. It also hurts Black and brown bodies in our community. To echo Commissioner Leek, during Black History Month, and knowing that all members of our community are equal, consider that wearing a mask is an act of compassion, and it's an action that matches our words. Dr. Washington, I also failed to hear any information you share about long COVID, so let me share a little. Long COVID is affecting 10 to 15% of pediatric COVID survivors. In Mecklenburg County alone, that equates to 250,000 people who are under the age of 18, at least 50,000 of whom so far have tested positive for COVID 1 or more times. That gives us 5,000 school-age children and counting that will have the trajectory of their lives forever changed by this infection. We're talking about organ damage, chronic fatigue, neurological issues, respiratory and digestive support needs, and whatever long COVID looks like for an individual, none of it's good. I ask you to reconsider, although the message is very clear. My children, kids like ours, those who are immune compromised, are not welcome in the county of Mecklenburg. We love you. You don't. You don't.
Thank you. Before I move to the next speaker, let me just share with you that we have the power and the authority to remove you from the audience. I want you to understand that. Show some respect, the same respect that you would ask people to show you. Thank you. Remember that. All right, Melissa Easley.
Disgusting. They make me sick.
She's virtual. All right, Melissa Easley. All right, are you there? All right, we'll move on. The next speaker is Liz Stankovich, followed by William Mitchell, followed by Michelle Connolly. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you all tonight on the issue of removing our emergency countywide mask mandate. In light of the dramatic improvement to health metrics and the widespread availability of vaccines, I am urging you to remove all current masking mandates in Mecklenburg County, including the current mandate for masking children K through 12 in school. Unfortunately, it has been our children who have paid the cost, the heaviest price, for the governor's endless state of emergency and ongoing mandates and restrictions. I'm the mother of 3 boys in CMS, and honestly, I could spend my entire time talking to you about how devastating this mask mandates have been for them, socially, mentally, and academically. But instead, I'm going to choose to talk to you about the reality of COVID-19 today. Today, February 16th, 2022. We are at a dramatically different spot than we were 2 years ago. So what have we learned in 2 years? What are the facts? What can we look at to actually know what's going on? Number 1, students are the lowest risk population on planet Earth. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, children have represented 0 to 0.2% of all COVID-19 related deaths. In other words, a total of 803 American children have died in the past 2 years from COVID-19. This is significantly less than the number of total deaths from both the flu and RSV in a typical pre-pandemic year. Significantly less. Number 2, according to the CDC, 80% of children and adults 5 years and older have at least 1 shot of the vaccine. 68% of those eligible are fully vaccinated. Vaccines, which prevent hospitalization and death up to 95%, have been widely available and free for over a year now. We now have an outpatient treatment called fluvoxamine, which reduces death by COVID-19 up to 91%. Number 3, there continues to be very poor quality data on community masking. Cloth masks have been shown to be ineffective in providing even the smallest amount of protection from Omicron, the most dominant COVID-19 variant. The vast majority of our students only wear cloth masks. Oh. I urge you to do the same thing.
Thank you.
And do not make our children viruses.
Mitchell? Is he virtual or not? Mr. Mitchell?
Person. Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. Commissioner Leek, you are now my BFF, and I'm going to be talking with you. Thank you very much. I live in Charlotte. I'm a physician. I have 2 boys, and they call me dumb old dad, but I want to talk to the committee. And thank you for allowing the committee to allow me to speak. What was initially based on good intentions now, as in the past, is now created fear and anxiety. We have now had diagnostic and medical therapies, including child development delays, economic hardships, and civil unrest. The decision for mask mandates to remain is not based on standard peer-reviewed and widely accepted medical information, especially I'm a physician that takes care of immune-compromised patients. The mask today has become a symbol of psychological fear than a device of medical protection. Even the Washington Post and the Bloomberg are realizing that masking is not effective, and they're publishing titles such as, "Mask mandates didn't make much of a difference anyway." The CDC has changed course. Their masking policies have been deferred to the states and localities. Look no further than New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and the cities of Denver, and especially Washington, D.C., all who have recently removed their mandates. I'm a physician within Mecklenburg County, and now with my 4 offices within all 6 districts of Mecklenburg County that service tens of thousands of patients directly and their families indirectly, I personally witnessed the direct effects of masking on their medical and psychological health, and I hear their stories of how masking of children is affecting them and their well-being. Commissioner Leek, I hear their suffering over developmental delays in the young children's speech, with parents having to stop work and stay at home with their children to attend remote learning. Look no further than India, where they are reporting a 364% increase in the rates of speech and auditory developmental delays. And personally, I have a good friend whose 4-year-old child at the age of 2 started wearing masks. Now she has to go to speech therapy to learn how to read lips while people are speaking. Fellow health providers are telling me that most pediatric visits to their clinics are largely due to depression, feelings of isolation, drug and alcohol abuse, as well as suicidal ideation. I cannot nor enact a medical policy that is not based on science. The virus is aerosolized. Masks are ineffective. With a standard opening of a surgical mask of 80 microns, you cannot keep back a virus that is 1 micron wide. There's enough public information to prove that ineffectiveness of masks is not only in stopping the spread of the virus, it does not improve outcomes. I am asking the county board, Commissioner Leek, I need your help. Stop this county-wide mask mandate. Take the chains off their face, let them breathe, let them have freedom.
Michelle Connolly? Is she virtual or in person? Michelle Connolly.
Hello. My name is Michelle Connolly, a mother to an incredible 14-year-old son in one of our Mecklenburg middle schools. Masks. I will reiterate what our North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore recently stated. It is time to give the choice back to the parents. Our surrounding county neighbors have demonstrated what should have been the case all along, as Mecklenburg County children are held hostage to the constant change in scientific and political goalposts with shifting metrics that keep the charade continued. Every day this continues, all students are unnecessarily suffering from learning loss, speech delays, and mental emotional health issues. Our children deserve better. We will not co-parent with the government as we witness the decline in state grade level basics and decline in public education enrollment as others seek homeschooling, Catholic, or private education because of the ignorance of those making masks a mandate for our children, which is gross negligence. As of February 3rd, 2022, CDC data continue to show 0.00% to 1.5% of all national child COVID-19 cases across hospitalizations and deaths. Our children need and deserve normalcy. 2 weeks to 2 years of flattening a generation. I saw a little girl hold a sign that stated, "Treat us like we're the Super Bowl." There is no state of emergency, and we're no longer in a pandemic, which was proven as we witnessed over 70,000 unmasked at the Super Bowl in LA this Sunday. While our children in Mecklenburg County was forced to come back, put a mask on for 8 hours a day, sitting spaced apart, not able to eat lunch together in the cafeteria, struggling to understand each other and the teachers, and most importantly, depriving our God-given right to breathe and freeing those smiles. There is no emergency, only cherry-picking mandates that's left our children, the one demographic that has not been affected since inception, being deprived of their education while being chained as if we were still in March 2020. Enough. State after state are dropping their mandates, and just yesterday, Illinois fought back and courts told the governor enough. My friends in Illinois got the call at 10 o'clock last night that masks were finally optional. Coachella, large concerts just announced yesterday, all mandates are dropped while Mecklenburg County holds on for dear life. This was never about transmissions and metrics. It was to flatten the curve of hospitalizations and deaths. That's been done. We should focus our time and energy on interventions like promotion of good, healthy eating, exercise, vitamins, being outdoors, sunshine. Allow parents to volunteer to be substitute teachers to alleviate staffing shortages. These can be done today, effective immediately. Mandates are being lifted across the country with the exception of schools and children. Our children are not exceptions. They are first priority that have suffered enough. I'm going to ask the public for 100 days to mask, just 100 days to not forever. That was said by President Biden 440 days ago. Unmask our children, no more politics, facts over fear, mandate freedom, make masks optional now. Thank you.
Next up is Brooke Wise, followed by Brian Wise, followed by Eva Wise. I guess that's the whole family.
They only get one turn.
Yeah, unless we could have said only 10 minutes for the whole discussion. Okay, somebody start. Your 3 minutes are running.
My name is Eve Weiss, and I'm a 9th grader at Audrey Kell High School. I am here to address the mask situation. People talk about the pros to masks, but I don't think people talk about the cons enough, especially with the impact it has on teenagers. People keep saying that kids are okay with the masks, but have any of y'all actually asked us? I haven't seen some of my friends' faces in basically 2 years, and nobody realizes the effect it has on us mentally. COVID has already made things hard for us, and depression has risen. There are more teen suicides in a year than the number of children that died from COVID. I can't even see my friends' faces. Some people don't like to talk about their feelings, and it makes them easier to hide with masks on their face. I can't tell the difference from a smile to a frown. Sorry. And we shouldn't even have to think of that. How come we have to wear masks, but thousands of people at the Super Bowl didn't have to wear them? Is it a punishment? Aren't we always talking about equality? Where's the fairness in that? We have to wear them in schools, but not football or other activities. Or how about the fact some schools only a couple miles away aren't required to wear masks, like Union County, and they have the same, if not less, cases than we do. It has gone on long enough. People will still wear them even if we are told we don't have to. If they want to, they will. Why can't it be a choice? Please do everything you can to make sure the mandates are lifted in schools. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for letting the community come and speak tonight. I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to take up all my minutes. Just about everybody said everything. I also want to thank the citizens for coming out, and as you can see, we're kind of fed up. The only thing I'm going to say is I'm hoping next Tuesday, I think y'all are going to pass it tonight, and I think we'll be all right there. But I don't think the board next Tuesday will. And I hope that everybody that's here tonight will show up next Tuesday, even though we won't be able to speak. That's all I'm going to say. I do appreciate y'all, and thank y'all.
My name is Brooke Weiss. I'm the chapter chair of Moms for Liberty Mecklenburg. This is the first time I've come to a county commissioners meeting, so thank you for having me and allowing me to speak. As cities and states all over America lift the mask mandates, I'm cautiously optimistic that this board is going to lift the mandate this evening. I'm going to keep my comments really brief. I know that it's not your decision to lift the mandates within CMS, but I'm very much hoping that you will use your influence to encourage the board members over there to lift the mandate. I am less optimistic about their decision, and I'm very much hoping that they will follow what I hope you do tonight. There's just no reason to give adults the choice to take the masks off and to still force our children. As my daughter said, she views it as a punishment. Currently, when you walk around the city, the only place that the mask mandate is enforced is in schools, and it's simply not fair. Thank you.
Our next speakers are Dana, and I will not try to pronounce your last name, Jeff Palmer and Ashley Wiley.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Dana Hogoldberg. I just want to open with a quote. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. This was recently stated by Dr. Melissa Harris Perry. She's a professor at Wake Forest University. I do not believe this is appropriate, nor do I believe that the majority of parents would agree with this. When I enrolled them into the public school system, I trustingly placed the two single most precious gifts I've been given by God under the supervision. I did not intend to relinquish control nor transfer parental authority over to the Board of Education. It appears that it has been taken from me. Now, that was my mistake, And now I find myself in front of another board for the second week in a row, begging strangers to allow me to determine what is best for my child. Our restrictive COVID-19 policies have driven thousands of people to pull their children out of public schools. We continue to lose students, and we will continue to lose students if we don't rightfully restore parents' control of their children. We're particularly concerned about the toll that our state's policies continue to have on children and teens. We won't rehash the details, but now I tell you, as I told the Board of Education last week, when a behavior proves to be dangerous and damaging, it moves from being a responsible action to being punitive and even considered abusive. It's time for CMS and Charlotte-Mecklenburg to acknowledge the endemic nature of the COVID-19 after the Omicron surge. Let's immediately shift our public dialogue towards defining a path for removing all COVID-19 restrictions in public schools. Most importantly, though, return the rights of parents, allowing us to determine what is appropriate for our children. Again, we know you have a lot of influence. Although it may not be your decision what the Board of Education does, I believe that you can make a difference in influencing the future path for our children. Thank you.
Two weeks ago, it was frustrating to listen to Dr. Washington give a presentation about the county's COVID response. His justification for keeping mask mandates was a few charts comparing Mecklenburg County to surrounding areas, which was supposed to illustrate COVID cases in areas with and without mask mandates. Two of the charts used data from September through December of last year, before Omicron, the most dominant variant. His last chart did include Omicron, but stopped at January 27th, which was ironically the point where Mecklenburg cases started trending higher than surrounding areas without mandates. This was the evidence he used to finish his presentation with, "I don't feel comfortable with ending the mask mandate." Charts that followed largely the same pattern, masks or no masks, with Mecklenburg sometimes having a handful of fewer cases and sometimes having more, especially with Omicron. Even as of today, UNC shows Mecklenburg County having less than 2 cases fewer per 10,000 residents than the rest of North Carolina. This is the benefit of mandated masking. 2 fewer cases per 10,000 people. 2. That's the benefit of forcing people to cover their faces with cloth. But how about the proven hazards of wearing a mask? Toxic stress and anxiousness, depression, asthma, and breathing difficulties, which I've developed for the past 2 years, increased CO2 intake, impaired communication, increased acne and other skin issues, ear, malformations, dental problems, bad breath, and last but certainly not least, learning loss and significant delays in cultural, language, and social skills. You and your experts kept extending the mask mandate just to be safe and to make you feel comfortable. But while the benefits of masking are uncertain and minimal at best, you failed to recognize that being overly cautious to make you feel comfortable had costs that are very certain and very measurable. The medical science on the hazards outweighing the benefits of masking hasn't changed, but you've ignored it. At least now that the political science is changing, you're listening to that. And when you end the mandate, you should do so at the same speed as you started it. Restricting citizens is always immediate. It's shameful that removing those restrictions isn't. Thank you.
Ashley Wiley, Sherry Johnson, and Jessica Crambit. Ashley Wiley.
Is she virtual?
Everybody's supposed to be in person from this point on.
Okay.
Ashley Wiley going twice. Ashley Wiley. Sherry Johnson.
assuming this, okay, great. So my name is Sherry Johnson, and I'm here tonight as a Mecklenburg County resident, and I'm also a parent to 2 kids in CMS. I actually came to speak in support of the continued indoor mask mandate. And I know that Dr. Washington has presented his report and his recommendation, so you guys have the information that you've had going along this week, and you probably have made up your mind. It's my first time speaking in front of the board, so I'm a little bit nervous, so that's what you hear in my voice. But I think I'm gonna change what I wanna say and speak a little more from the heart to you all. I'm advocating and I wanna represent people that have not come out in an orchestrated campaign to sway your opinion. So there's a ton of Mecklenburg County residents who have a different opinion, who are not a part of a group that has signed up to flood your rolls and to make their voices heard. It's not always the squeakiest wheel. It's not always the people with the most socioeconomic background. Sometimes there are people that have jobs, are not as plugged in, are not as tuned in. You guys know that last year when parents had the choice, about 47% of CMS parents decided to choose virtual, an option for their children, rather than send their children into the school building. We all are tired of wearing a mask. Nobody thinks this is the best thing or a great thing, but we make the decision to wear it because we think it's the better decision for the larger community, not just what I want, not just what I think is most comfortable, but what's the best decision for the community. So I'm here to advocate that you, when you take all these recommendations in and listen to all the people that are here, that you make a recommendation for policy that protects everybody. We all know that the minority is not always the group that has the best interest for everyone. We've experienced that throughout history. We know what that's about. It's not always the squeakiest wheel, but think about the entire community. I want my kids to remain in school. I want them to have that experience. Being remote was hard for them. What's the best way to make that happen for all children? So I'm here to encourage you to, when you make your recommendations, that indoor masking continues, especially for school-age children. That's it. Thank you for listening.
All right, Jessica Cranberry. Jessica? Jessica going twice. All right, Tracy Cockerham.
Good evening. I'm a working mother of a 3.5-year-old in the daycare setting and a 5-year-old in the elementary school. I'm here to state my case for ending the mask mandate in Mecklenburg County and discontinuing the North Carolina School Toolkit for both child care centers and K through 12. Schools and daycare centers are being handcuffed by the mandates and toolkits that are in place. Please return to parent choice. To be blunt, no one sitting in an office should be making a decision for my child unless they are putting boots on the ground to see what is happening. And let me tell you what you'll see. You'll see angst and fear as I strap a mask on a healthy 3-year-old and usher him into the daycare so mommy and daddy can go to work. I will tell him to do it because everyone else is, even though I fundamentally believe that we are to teach our children not to jump off the bridge just because everyone else is. You'll see kindergartners that are behind, the leaders of our future that can't read, and they certainly can't pick up on emotional cues that are predominantly expressed by the face. You'll see that children do not wear the mask correctly. They suck on it, they play with it, they touch it with their dirty hands. Earlier this week, I picked my child up, and when I removed his mask, it was drenched in blood. He had worn a blood-soaked mask since PE because he was anxious to tell his teachers. Before this pandemic, we were aware and concerned about the mental well-being of our citizens. In fact, it was considered undeniable science. We are now sweeping the mental health under the rug to keep some sort of false optics going.
Policies by the CDC are changing by the day, and not all of them are grounded in facts. Let's look at some of the facts that are readily available to anyone who seeks them. According to the AAP, in 2021, children were 0.00% to 0.23% of all COVID deaths. By far, children are more ill or dying of heart disease, cancer, suicide, or drowning. Let's mandate exercise and healthy eating instead of playing politics with my child by putting a covering over their nose and mouth. The CDC itself says that masks don't work. What are we doing, Mecklenburg County? The Mecklenburg mask mandate is a joke at this juncture in the end epidemic. Smoke and mirrors comes to mind, and let me tell you exactly what that means. Magicians, and I'm talking to y'all, depend upon smoke and mirrors to perform tricks. The mirrors help create an illusion, and the smoke is frequently used to divert the attention of the audience. The gig is up, the audience is on to the illusion, and we won't stop fighting for our children until something changes.
Next speaker is Mia McDonald, and then Gina Navarrete. Mia McDonald, are you here? Gina Navarrete. And the last speaker is Robert Stebbins, if Robert is here. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. So I was here at this meeting when you decided to vote to mask us up. And I saw a large majority of the people that came here to speak all spoke not wanting the mask mandate and provided all their evidence. And all these people here that spoke ahead of me all did a fantastic job of sharing about all the issues associated with masks and the harms it provides to kids. I wanted to give you two stories here. In Mecklenburg County, my son happens to be a senior at one of your public high schools here in Mecklenburg County. And in October, he came home with a cold. And one of his buddies said, "Oh, I see you got the cold that's been going around the school." And he said, "Yeah, I guess so." So it ran pretty rampant throughout the school. But keep in mind, they're all wearing masks. So what good did that do? Then in January, COVID showed up in the school. I don't know how rampant it was, but my son got it. Of course, I did as well, and my wife. And it ran through the school. I don't know what good the masks are doing. I mean, I'm giving you two prime examples here of my son in his public high school where masks have not provided any benefit in stopping the spread of COVID. Some people have touched on some of this, but I think the world is awake now. The world sees exactly what's going on, not just with the masks, but with COVID and the vaccines. They're all well aware. And that convoy that you see up in Canada, it's worldwide. It's not just Canada. The whole world now is awake, and I see protests and rallies going on in every country you can imagine. So my suggestion to you guys, you jump on the convoy and you vote to end the mask mandate. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, is there any other speakers signed up? All right, this concludes that portion of our meeting. Before we move forward, let me just share with our public again, we would ask that you give my colleagues the same respect that they gave you as you shared your concerns. So in order to get this item on the agenda, there's a recommendation from our health director. And that is to, well, first of all, let me just make sure that everybody understands that because this is a health issue, as a consolidated Board of Health, we are sitting as the Board of Health at this point and not as the Mecklenburg County Commission, because the Board of Health is the board that issues health rules. This is a health rule, so I want to make sure that we clearly understand that first. So the recommendation is to rescind the Board of Health rule requiring indoor face covering. That's the recommendation. Let me just say that before we have debate on this, if there is any, that most of us have gotten a lot of email relative to this issue. And I think you heard from one of the speakers who believe that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Just because people speak loud and are arrogant, they expect it to get their way. And so what I want to remind you of is that there are also people on the other side of the fence. There are people who are very nervous about what happens when masks come off. And so with that in mind, I'm asking that this board show some respect for those people who believe that masks should continue to be worn by amending the health director's recommendation and rescind the Board of Health rule requiring indoor face covering and move to a mask optional and move to mask optional in respect for those people who want to feel comfortable continuing to wear their mask.
All right, so. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can you clarify? I'm not clear how you're proposing to amend the recommendation.
Well,
That's his recommendation right here.
Is it just out of respect, the language, because it's the same thing, correct?
Right. So it's basically to add mask optional as opposed to rescind it.
So so that I'm clear, Mr. Chair, you want to amend the recommendation so that the Board of Health rule will be effective on February 26th to leave mask requirements as optional for the community.
That's what I'd like, with the board's agree.
Did you all pass out any information from that end?
No, I just came up with that.
Can we have a comment from Dr. Washington on that?
Sure. I just want to make sure we got any other comments first.
So basically, this does not change revoking the mask in any way. It just says it's mask optional to promote respect for people who want to continue to wear them.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Washington.
Yes, sir. I'm right in front of you.
Oh, okay. All right. One of the commissioners wanted to hear your comments relative to that.
Certainly. So Chair Dunlap and commissioners, I do not believe that that is a feasible option for a number of reasons. The first of those is that what you're really asking for is an amendment to the Board of Health rule, and we would have to actually amend the rule itself to reflect anything different than what's in the rule currently. So the options before us this evening are to propose an amendment, but I believe, and I'll defer to the attorney for this, but I believe that the proposal would need to be something that the clerk can document. And also, there are a number of provisions in the rule that we would need to consider changing to update to reflect what you're describing. So I don't know. Tyrone, I'll defer to you.
They can certainly do that. We just have to publish it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm sorry for clarity. Are you
Wait. Commissioner Cotham.
Okay. Mr. Wade, I did not hear you. We are a little distant, and you were looking at Dr. Washington. Could you say that again? And as I understand, you're saying, Dr. Washington, that you can't agree to that. Is that what you said?
I certainly can agree if it's allowable. My question was whether or not what's allowable.
Could you also slow down a little bit?
Sorry.
That's okay, because this is important. We have to get it right.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you just say again what you thought about our chairman's comment?
I did not believe that that was possible, but I defer to the attorney to advise you all on what you can and cannot do this evening. My recommendation stands to rescind the mask mandate as it stands currently.
So you went, okay.
So my comment, Commissioner Cotham, was the board, as the Board of Health, can amend the rule that it adopted to reflect making it optional rather than mandating it. Dr. Washington is recommending a full rescission or repeal of the rule.
That shouldn't be difficult. One is to rescind it altogether, and one is to make it mask optional.
So I just did.
Yeah, let us hear.
So just so that we're clear.
Excuse me. All right.
It will affect the
Dina.
timing of that because we
Okay,
have
Dina,
to.
I can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
It will affect the timing
Okay.
because we have to rewrite it. So it does complicate things. I mean, like the attorney said, you can do it, but it just, because we have to publish it in the Observer and we'd have to go back and rewrite it. So it would complicate the timing. So I just
All
want
right,
to be aware
thank
of
you.
that.
So listen, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take back my recommendation because I forgot about the 10-day wait period. If we do it, we got to publish it, and it's 10 days before it becomes effective anyway. Under this situation, we'd have to rewrite it and then republish it, which puts another 10 days on it, right?
Well, we haven't published it yet. So we'd publish it. We have to wait 10 days. And so we would publish it. We just haven't written it. We've written it for repeal. But if you don't want to repeal it, we have to rewrite it and then publish it. So you have 10 days, which is why it said effective February 26th.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, wait a minute. We had Commissioner Altman.
Actually, go ahead, Commissioner Cotham. I need to consider this more.
Okay. I would just, Mr. Chairman, we have a new health director. He has a doctorate in epidemiology. We are fortunate to have him. And this is his first request from us. And I would just feel better if we supported him, because I'm sure he has done the research. Again, he's an epidemiologist. He has a master's in public health. And I would just feel more comfortable, with all due respect to you, Mr. Chairman, that we agree and follow what he is asking us to do. And then Dina, she can do her part, and the manager, but I just think we need to do this as a board for our new health director.
All right, thank you. Commissioner,
Thank you. Dr. Washington, what is the downside to making the policy mask optional, putting aside the notice and the timing? From your professional point of view, what is the downside?
Sure. So, Commissioner Altman and other commissioners, I recognize that much of the discussion this evening is about the mask mandate, but I do want to emphasize that my recommendations this evening are not just about the mask mandate, but they're about our overall response to COVID. We are, in fact, turning a corner in that response. It is subject to change depending on as the virus mutates and there are new variants and things become complicated, if there's a more severe variant or if there's something that substantively changes in terms of the conditions in the community. So my recommendation is as a package, but in fact, the Board of Health rule is the issue of debate. The downside, I believe, to what you're proposing relative to a mask optional Board of Health rule is that there simply is no mechanism to enforce an optional rule. Like, I don't know how you would enforce that in the community globally relative to it being optional. And so to me, I don't know that a rule is necessary to govern that issue. But again, I'll defer to the manager and to the attorney to advise relative to the rulemaking.
So I'm going to simplify this, and I am going to not put forth that recommendation, but I do want to respect the fact that there are some people who want that option. So with that being said, the chair will entertain a motion to rescind the Board of Health rule requiring indoor face covering, which would include all of the other recommendations that are a part of this presentation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion. Commissioner McDowell, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. Dr. Washington, can you help us understand your conversations with other medical professionals, like in the community, the hospitals, the other folks that you normally confer with?
Sure.
And just, let us know if this is a unanimous decision, and if it wasn't, would we know?
Yes, absolutely. So I will say that I've had a number of discussions, not just in the last couple of weeks, but over the last several months since I took this position, about the future of COVID response. And we have been looking very closely, and I've assured you all throughout my presentations that that is something that we have to be prepared for, and it will be uncomfortable for a lot of people. I have consulted with both healthcare systems here in Mecklenburg County and have received their support in this decision. I've also consulted with every health director in the state that also currently has a mask mandate in their county, and we're all moving in this direction. I have also consulted with the state, as well as the state epidemiologists and the leadership at the state, and they understand what we're doing in terms of this transition. And we all anticipate, again, as I alluded during my presentation, additional changes to guidance across the state and the federal government landscape. But I believe that we in Mecklenburg County have to make the best decision for this community and prepare to move this transition forward. And of course, it's subject to change. I can't tell you what's going to happen to COVID. I don't have a crystal ball for that purposes. And so it very well may change. But I do think right now is the time to prepare our off-ramp. And there might be a time where I might have to stand here and say we need to on-ramp. But at this time, I do believe this is the best course of action for the community.
Okay, just a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So regarding the hospitals, you did have a slide which talked about how numbers have come down. Can you tell us what capacity the hospitals are?
Sure. Both hospitals' capacity is stable at this time. Their capacity always runs above 90%. That's normal for their operations. The biggest challenge that both the healthcare, we have consulted with our emergency medical services. The biggest challenge that they're having relative to this is still just a general staffing shortage that healthcare is having overall. That is not a result of the pandemic specifically, because of COVID cases in the hospital. It's just an employment workforce issue. And so right now, there are roughly 300 people in the hospital in Mecklenburg County. That number has plummeted by 50% since I last talked to you all. And so I do think that that is an important indicator. Their operation status right now, currently today, is stable. I think people are aware that there are a number of National Guard and FEMA teams deployed here in Mecklenburg County. I do expect that they will be departing Mecklenburg County in the next week and a half or so. So I do feel confident that I have the support of those in our community in that space in this decision.
So it's dropped 50% since the last time? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Commissioner Meyer.
Later, but I don't have any questions for him. Do we make our statements now or later?
Well, this is questions. All right, Commissioner Powell.
Well, I had an alternate motion to, and when I make my motion, then we can talk about that. But I have an alternate motion to, everything that Dr. Washington has said, but to end it immediately.
We can't because of the 10-day rule.
And so
That requires 10 days. Statute requires 10 days notice.
So we are legally bound to wait.
We're bound to follow state law.
Well, I want to make sure we follow the law, but it's, and I have some comments. There was a lady that talked about the energy of love, and that's important to me. There is energy in anger, and I try to hear through that, because I think a lot of times when people are angry, it comes from love. So I try to hear all of it. I want to thank all the nurses who shared their personal experiences about their children. It was very touching to me. And while we got bombarded with emails, I mean bombarded, from both sides, I read through all of them. We are in a dramatically different spot. And, when we made the mask mandate, we indicated it's our intention to reevaluate this rule as circumstances change. And they have changed. And I just want everyone to know, I believe in love, and I love our children, and I love our community. And so if there is someone, and I'm sure there are in the world, people that are drunk with power, If there's someone in Mecklenburg County that's drunk with the power of a mask mandate, I haven't met them. We really have done the best we can to protect public health. And I'm sorry that anyone has suffered. And it is time for this mask mandate to end, and I support the end of the mandate. But I just want you to know that. Like, I hear you in your love, and I hear you in your anger. And thank you for coming.
All right, Commissioner Jarrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Washington, there's two areas that I want to cover. First, I think the community would like clarification on when initially 4 months ago or X number of months ago we were talking about it, we talked about a 5% target. And obviously we're not there. Sure. Circumstances are completely different, but I would really like for you to speak to that and why things, specifically why things are different, why we don't have to actually really use that target anymore. The second thing I'd like you to do is, because we have a gallery full of people that are really concerned about the decision for CMS, can you help us? There was a slide on the deck where you talked about CMS, you talked about potentially what was going on with the state, and I don't know if they can pull the deck back up to go through that slide, but I'd like you to walk everyone that's here through that slide and anybody listening as well, so that we have that clarification, please.
Sure. So relative to the 5% metric, there are a couple of things. One, I've talked a lot about the increasingly unreliable nature of that metric. And it is concerning for me that a public policy would be based on a metric that we are not confident in truly represents what's happening in our community. There is sufficient evidence that our team has reviewed very, very, very closely to be able to understand sort of what's happening with transmission in the community. And I do expect that that metric, which again was originally sort of established by our partners in the federal government, will start to transition more globally away from that. And I do expect that to come. I don't, again, as I alluded to earlier, the percent positivity will still help us understand some things about how the pandemic is evolving, but it will not be the predominant metric by which we need to use to understand when we need to consider community mitigation measures. We really need to focus on severity of impact, which I believe you'll begin to hear more about that over time. I don't know when. There could be another month or two, but I do think, given that, I do think we need to move in that direction. Relative to CMS, and I also will add that CMS is just like any other entity in the county. They are able to make whatever decision they would like to make relative to mask requirements. I will go to give my professional opinion and guidance to their meeting directly, but similar to any other institution, they are able to continue a mask requirement if they so choose, if this body lifts the mask mandate for the overall community. They will have to make a vote about lifting the mask mandate, and I don't know when that vote will happen. I have talked to the superintendent several times this week to give him an opportunity for us to talk about sort of what the conditions in schools are and to understand sort of what planning would need to be put into place. As I mentioned earlier, they are implementing some pretty substantial changes this week relative to contact tracing and quarantining. I know it might sound like, oh, we're just getting rid of stuff, but it does take a lot of effort to implement new processes to manage those changes. So my recommendation to him has been fairly consistent that yes, in the horizon, the very near future, I do see the need for an off-ramp to the mask mandate in public schools and all schools for that matter. But that does need to be measured, and it needs to happen in compliance with the state's requirements for those institutions, including the Department of Public Instruction, that they will have to consider the risk associated with not following that guidance, and that's not a decision I can make for them.
Thank you. That concludes my questions.
All right. Is yours a question?
Question.
All right.
One question. Dr. Washington, thank you. In terms of schools, is it possible that, and I know you can't make the decision for schools and we can't either, I do support soon schools allow masks to come off. But is it possible that they can phase into it? Can teachers who are teaching speech, reading, can they take their mask off? Can they have that flexibility? because that really, I understand how much of a problem that is.
Sure, and I certainly understand that as well. I certainly think that there are several options that they could consider as it relates to how they phase or how they off-ramp, as I'll call it to keep it simple. That could be immediately, that could be over at a set date. That there could be a number of conditions they might consider. Again, that will be their decision, and I will consider whatever questions they have for me about my professional opinion at that time next week.
Thank you.
All right, just a minute, Commissioner Leak, you'll be next. Mr. Wade,
Yes, sir.
did we have a motion at all on the floor?
Earlier you did, yes.
Well, not the one that I rescinded, but I mean, the motion to rescind the Board of Health rule requiring indoor face
Yes.
coverage.
Yes.
And then we did
didn't
have a
vote.
second.
Alan can tell you who.
Yes, we did.
Okay, no, I just want to know we had one. All right, so final comments, and then we're going to move to a vote.
Wait, I haven't asked this question.
What, you passed up that opportunity.
No, that's when you were talking about your motion. I have questions for Dr. Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't spoken at all.
Wait a minute. Commissioner Lee, let her.
That's fair. I'll be
Okay.
last. I'm always last.
All right.
You can go.
No, you did that the last time. So when it's your turn, you need to speak.
Okay. Dr. Washington,
Yes.
It concerns me that we're diverging from CDC recommendations. CDC recommends mask indoors, even for the fully vaccinated, where the case rate is 50 or more new cases in the last 7 days per 100,000 people, or over 8% positivity rate. Of course, we're way, way, way over that. So my question to you is, why do you feel that it's both safe and warranted to diverge from the CDC recommendation?
Sure. So let me be clear about my recommendations this evening. I am asking this body to rescind the countywide mandate, but I am not discouraging people from wearing masks. The CDC certainly continues to recommend that individuals, particularly those who are at greater risk of infection or severe illness or complications, continue to wear masks when they're in indoor public settings. I will continue to also recommend that people wear masks in this community. This is not getting rid of the mask, this is getting rid of the mandate. And to be very clear, to be clear, I do anticipate that the CDC, unfortunately that process, the CDC director this afternoon did make an announcement that they will be shifting their guidance in a matter of days relative to their recommendations around universal masking. Unfortunately, that meeting, I don't know when it will be, but we are here this evening, and I think that we are, our team at the department has worked really hard to understand where we're headed and to try to lay out a plan to make sure that we are prioritizing those at our greatest risk in this community and doing what's most effective as it relates to preventing the impact of COVID on our community.
Thank you. How would you describe the risk of the triple vaccinated for breakthrough infections with Omicron as we sit today?
Sure. So certainly I think we don't have, the team's working on some local data relative to this. There is national data that shows from a number of cities as well as from a number of states and a couple of multi-state analyses that show very clearly that individuals who have received their third dose or their booster dose are at the greatest risk of, are the most protected in our community from severe illness and hospitalization as well as death. The evidence is very clear. I mean, the margins by which the rate of hospitalization among the vaccinated compared to those who are not are anywhere from 9 to 13 times greater risk. So I believe that that's clear, and there's sufficient evidence across the country to support that.
Did I understand you to say that the leaders of both hospitals and the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services are aware of your recommendation and support it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And, just in terms of if we're talking about a post-mandate environment, what though is your recommendation to the community? Should we be engaging in mass gatherings? Should we be, I would like to know what you recommend, even if it's no longer a mandate, as we try to continue to be smart and be safe.
Yes, ma'am. So I, as a public health professional, it would be irresponsible for me.
I'm sorry, can you speak a little bit more slowly?
Sure. As a public health professional, it would be irresponsible for me to not recommend individuals to wear masks and protect themselves in the community. I believe that there are some people who are at much greater risk of severe complications due to COVID, as well as infection, that certainly should strictly adhere to wearing a mask. There are also some settings where it is critically important that people continue to universally mask. That includes healthcare, that includes congregate living settings where the risk of very large outbreaks still exists, particularly in long-term care facilities where those residents are so much more vulnerable medically than those of us that might be out in the community. So I'm still recommending that individuals assess their risk relative to COVID-19, globally speaking, and make a decision when they're going in settings, particularly indoor public settings, particularly settings that don't have great ventilation or overcrowded. I would wear a mask. That would be my decision, and that would be what I would recommend the community members to do as well. There are a larger number of people in our community that are not at high risk of infection because they've recently had an infection. Those individuals might make a very different decision because if you've recently been infected, you may feel like your risk of infection is pretty low, which it really is. Barring new variants, we know that there's some level of protection. The last thing I should mention here that I forgot to mention clearly earlier was that we do have a higher level of immunity in our community because we have higher vaccination rates, and we do have a large number of people who have natural immunity at this time because of the large number of people that were infected with the Omicron variant in our community. And so I do believe that that gives us great confidence in our ability to be able to make this transition at this time.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Leek.
Thank you. These people up here have asked the same questions over and over again. We've been told about the 10 days repeatedly. My motion is to allow these parents to be able, within the given law-abiding process, to take the mask off and enjoy life. So move, Mr. Chairman. The law says. I am sick of it. Every time you turn around, it becomes very political. Bomb, bomb. You need to go home and grab your babies and love them and take the daggone mask off.
Oh, let me explain.
I love you!
Hold up. There's a motion on the floor. It was moved and properly seconded, which means that Commissioner Leek's motion becomes a substitute motion. And is there a second to her substitute motion?
Well, she had the first motion.
No, she did not.
She's asking for immediate?
Because I was the
I
second.
said what I said. Didn't you hear me?
Okay, so you're
I did hear you.
you're changing your motion.
The motion is the same. Only thing I'm saying is let us abide by the 10 days, but allow them to go to be able to do that, to take these masks off within that given time.
Commissioner
So
Lee?
move again.
Commissioner Lee, we are trying to clarify. As I understand from the clerk, you made the original motion.
Right.
Which was to rescind the
The
board.
original motion then.
Okay, well, then we're still up for discussion.
No.
All right.
Take the last motion. It meant the same thing, Mr.
It's the same
Dunlap.
thing. It's the same thing.
No, it did not. Okay, so
Wait a minute, read it then. Let her read it. Let the clerk read it.
Right here.
right.
You didn't
Okay.
let me talk.
Motion was made by Commissioner Cotham, seconded by Commissioner Leek, and unanimously carried with Commissioners, well, not when it hasn't been there yet, but that,
I can't
take
hear you,
action.
Christine. Can you take your mask off?
to take action as Board of County Commissioners sitting as a consolidated human services agency to rescind the Board of Health rule requiring indoor face coverings.
That is the original motion.
That's the original
So
motion.
the question is, are you having a motion separate and apart from that? Or are you accepting that as the original motion?
I accept that as the original
All right,
motion.
thank you. So we've got one motion on the floor. All right. Some of you have asked for last comments, and then we're going to vote.
I'm going to call for order of the day.
I'm gonna start
I'm
with
going to call for
Commissioner.
order of the day. We've talked about it.
Okay, Commissioner Leek, you don't get to make the final decision. This is why we have a
I
board.
forgot you in charge.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been, it's been hard to sit here tonight, honestly. I really hate it
Everybody.
that the culture wars are brought in here. There's a real disturbing framing of our motives, of the school board's motives. And, you know, I just wish that this community could be sensitive. I'm really disappointed in the, you know what, guys? Look at yourselves. Look at this group in here. This is an extremely homogeneous group. Our community is a majority minority community.
Excuse me. She was respectful when you were speaking. Thank you.
We have a majority minority community. And, you know, this group has acted as if COVID isn't real. And I just want to say that I hope that moving forward, this board will, could you please?
Excuse me, ma'am.
We don't.
If I have to ask you a second time, you'll be removed. Thank you. Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing is that our work is not done because we have only, what, 67% was it, of folks vaccinated? Now we're going to have, since we won't have a mandate, which I do support lifting the mandate, but I think what it does is it makes our job a little bit harder to get the word out about how people can keep themselves safe who are vulnerable. I think that most of the folks in this chamber are probably not vulnerable, and the folks who aren't here tonight. And so out of respect for them, I wish we could change the language, Mr. Chairman. I liked your amendment, but I understand. I want to respect our public health director and his recommendations. I'm disappointed that it feels confusing for the language going forward for schools. I feel like this is just sort of ambiguous, and I just don't envy the position that they're being put in. And so I feel like if we're lifting the mask mandate for the county, it ought to be applying to schools, and we should be finding a way to keep folks safe who need to be safe. And so it's just going to be harder. You know, we do have two Charlottes. We've known that for a long time, and this is where it shows up. You know, with this group right here, I just want to say, God help us.
You said what? Say that again?
I said, God help us.
Commissioner Meyer.
I'll wait till they stop. Thank you, Chair. I want to first say, well, I'm an open book. I've been wanting the mask mandate to end for a while now. I've been wanting the children to be without masks. I am an open book. So I'm not going to talk about why I want that. That's been said. I support Dr. Washington, all his reasons. I want to thank Commissioner Powell because she was so kind during this, and because I was sitting here boiling mad. And so you talked me off the ledge a little bit, and I appreciate that. But I want to make this point. There was a woman who was speaking virtually with 2 sick children, and she's terrified for her children, and she got made fun of in this audience. And that is despicable. There are people who are terrified to go outside, and there has to be respect. Yes, she can wear a mask, and she knows that. But the fact is,
excuse me,
no one wants to be felt like an outcast. And that, I'm not going to argue with you. I also want to recognize the woman who stood here on an island and spoke to us, who wanted to keep the mask mandate. That takes courage, and I appreciate that so much. You have my utmost respect.
all right. Commissioner Lee, everybody's getting a turn, all right?
I'm saying this from the depths of my heart when people say that we're playing cultural differences and bringing that into the picture. Well, they've been playing cultural differences since they've been on the board, so what difference does it make? I'm speaking that what I feel, you can't tell me what I feel and why I'm saying it. And I'm just as nice as anybody else up here. So I'm saying what I said before. Let the people follow the law for 10 days and just wrap themselves with the mask and their children. We all have a party downtown in the square. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
From the beginning, my commitment has been to follow the science. If that means inconvenient protocols critical to protect health and human life, I will do so. If that means rescinding regulations which are no longer warranted, given the evolving nature of the virus, access to vaccines, and prevalence of people with immunity who have gotten the virus, I will do that too. These decisions must never be about dogma or politics. We need to be critical thinkers. We need to stay informed from reputable sources. We need to be open to hearing new information. We need to be willing to adapt as circumstances change so we can meet the needs as they evolve. We also need to care about one another and sometimes sacrifice to protect others. That is my job, and that is your job too. And I want to thank all who have done their utmost to look out for others. I deeply appreciate you. I have closely listened to the Public Health Director's reasonings and data on which he has relied in making today's recommendation. By way of reminder, Dr. Washington came to Mecklenburg County Public Health at the inception of the pandemic as Deputy Public Health Director. He may be new to some, he may seem like a new face of Mecklenburg Public Health, but he is not new. He has been with us every step of the way prior to becoming director. We are lucky to have someone at the helm who has a PhD in epidemiology. Many communities are not so fortunate. I've consulted not only with Dr. Washington, but with a diversity of voices throughout the community. Those conversations, taken in tandem with the fact that Novant, Atrium, and NCDHHS also support this recommendation, have led me to a yes vote on rescinding the mandate. Finally, I will note that the best way to ensure that we never need to reinstitute a mask mandate is to stamp out COVID and its variants, like we have with so many other illnesses for which we are blessed to have a vaccine. Thus, my final message to this community is please get vaccinated and stay boosted. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Powell.
They don't even like vaccines.
No further comments.
Commissioner Kopp.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for all of you who have come here today. You know, we are in the third year of this, and we have all changed. Our society has changed. And we all know, and we were all trying to follow the science, but we all know that science, they had some conflicts themselves among science. You hear this one thing from the World Health Organization, and then you hear from this organization. But that is just, I really wasn't upset about that because I felt every organization was doing the best they could with the information they had. But we all know that the goalpost kept changing. In the beginning, it was, we had to flatten the curve. Remember all these things? We had to flatten that curve. And then we stopped talking about that. Then we were all doing the temperature every day. You know, when you go to school, we were all buying more thermometers. And then that changed. And that's okay. But we have to acknowledge that it's been tough. And the mask, we were all wearing the mask. And in the beginning, it was, don't wear the mask. We have to save the mask for the healthcare people. Remember that? And then it was like, oh no, we all need to wear the mask. And then lately it's, you know, we have to wear the N95 mask. You know, and so we all have those, and they're all made in China, whatever. But all of this has been very stressful on adults, and it has been very stressful on children. I was very impressed with this young lady who came and spoke. She was very brave. There were children here, and we all hear stories. And the last, we have all been reading. I have read every email, and I have tried to respond to every email that I received. And I have also been on the street talking to the people, and I have been. And I would say probably 90% of the people that with whom I spoke wanted it to lift the mandate. And of course, it's very important, just as Commissioner Meyer said, like that woman who spoke, Stacy, she has 2 very seriously ill children. And we need to not judge people if they're wearing a mask. You know, that's their, I mean, and also if they, I mean, certainly over the past few years, I've had to take my mask off. You know, it's kind of a shame I had to admit to the whole world that I have heart disease. And sometimes when I get mad, I get winded. And so I have to take it off. And too many people have had to tell their health problems to strangers. And we have to be sensitive to that. And, you know, that shouldn't be. And we need to be respectful of the ones who have to, you know, who want to wear the mask. And that's okay. My daughter is a long-haul COVID. She has been, you know, vaccinated and boosted and wears a mask, and she's had COVID 3 times. And it's serious. COVID is we all know people who have died. COVID is serious. And people who have long-haul COVID, the big concern is blood clots that can kill you. So it is serious. So we don't know what all of us are going through. But I do know that there's this common theme that the masks are adding to the stress in families because we see children who are struggling. I see my grandchildren struggling with it. You see it on the street. You see kids drop a mask and put it on again. You know, I've heard from so many school nurses, I've heard from so many teachers, especially of younger children and parents of younger children, probably many of you have written to me. And we have to be sensitive that these younger children, that's all they know is the mask. You know, kids that are started college, all they know, I'll wind up in a second, is remote. They don't even know the college experience. This has made a toll on all of us. So I just hope, I am thrilled we have our health director. He is highly qualified. I want to support him, and we need to support each other and be patient and let everybody get to where they need to be, you know, at their rate, and that's fine. That concludes my comments. You're all amazing. We're all doing the best we can. So are we. And even though it doesn't look like we are.
Commissioner Durrell.
Dr. Washington, I want to address you and your team first. I want to say to any of our Mecklenburg County staff that's listening, particularly the public health staff, I want to say thank you on behalf of this community. You all have worked tirelessly. You've taken a lot of shots. I've seen you, Dr. Washington, have to take shots that even the previous health director didn't take, which is interesting on a lot of different levels. But I want you to know that I certainly respect your credentials. I appreciate it. A lot of times what you all don't see is what happens behind the scenes. And I'd like to share a little bit of when we as a board are trying to really wrestle with these critical decisions that impact the people that we've been elected to serve, there are a lot of questions. There is a lot of pushback behind the scenes, a lot of pushback. And I appreciate Dr. Washington being so, taking the politics out of all of your responses and giving us, you know, from your professional opinion all the information that you've been able to gather to tell us exactly what you think. That has been really helpful to me. I think it's been helpful to my colleagues. I think it's been actually beneficial to the community. We can apply different lenses. We can say, you know, I guess there are different lenses that people apply to this, but I want you to know that you and your staff are certainly appreciated, and we need to make that acknowledgement in this community. I think every decision, every piece of information that we've received, I believe, has come from the space of protection. It's come from a good space. And so when I think about that, I also want to focus on, I do believe that decisions that were made save lives. I do believe that. And I said at the time when we made these, or I've said publicly, that when you make a recommendation, I'm going to follow that recommendation. You are the expert. And so I certainly have no issues with following your recommendation, but I also want to be sensitive to people in the community that are nervous, that still have conditions that cause them to be in spaces and places where they may feel unsafe or have some anxiety. And so I want to be sensitive to those people that are listening. I appreciate the folks that came and spoke through that lens tonight as well. To the Weiss family, I so appreciate the spirit in which you all came up to this dais. Eve, I think you're a phenomenal young lady. You're going places, you know, you're going far. And thank you, but I do appreciate the spirit in which you all approach this. It's great for the community to come out and allow your voices to be heard. And I am thankful, and I think my colleagues are thankful as well. I just hope that we can get to a space in a community in this country where we can come from a space of not political ideology all the time, but we can come from a principled standpoint and figure out the best way that all of us can coexist and live together in a way that is respectful. And I think that's what we all deserve. That's what we all expect. It doesn't matter if you have a D, R, I, and anything else in between. And so, again, as we continue to serve this community, I think we will continue to do it with honor and do it with integrity. But we can't do anything without the community and without our staff. And I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So let me start by dittoing Commissioner Jarrell's comments about Dr. Washington and his staff. I so appreciate your preparedness. No matter what questions were asked of you, you had an answer. You had a response. It wasn't political. It was based on your knowledge and expertise. And you don't know how much that is really appreciated. I wanted to say that I am certainly sensitive to those who feel that they need to wear masks for protection. And the concern that has been expressed is that for some reason, if you wear a mask, once the mask mandate is lifted, those people will be ostracized. I would hope that this community is sensitive enough and understands that everybody comes from a different place. One person's problems is not another person's problems. One person's issue is not necessarily somebody else's issue. And they have a right to be concerned about things that are important to them. Irrespective of people who are still being rude, irrespective of people who think that their thoughts should supersede everybody else's thoughts, this notion of superiority, and it happens, and it continues to happen, and it's happened throughout the dialogue. This board has been extremely respectful of everybody's comments, whether they agree with you or not. We simply asked the same, and we couldn't get it. That says a lot about this community. And so I respect Dr. Washington. I am going to support the recommendation. And in doing so, I will still ask that this community respect the rights of those who feel they need to still wear a mask. And one of the reasons why I didn't push the issue is because by rescinding the mask mandate, mask optional is up to each individual. All right, with that said, there is a motion on the floor. It's been moved and properly seconded. Those in favor of the motion, let's see by a show of hands. All right, Madam Clerk, that is unanimous.
Thank you all.
And y'all still here?
What's too late? Why didn't they clap?
All right. At this time, we'll move to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt those things that have not been removed?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it, so carries the motion. All right, so the first item that has been pulled is item number 7387, budget amendment for Carolina Volunteer Fire Department fund balance.
I pull that, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind if I speak.
Certainly.
I pull that to find out which of the volunteer fire departments are we saying that we're going to support?
This is the Carolina Volunteer Fire Department.
Located in what part of the county?
It's in the ETJ somewhere. I'm not exactly sure its location.
How much are we allocating for that?
Well, it's their fund balance. It's $15,032 so they can purchase a fire truck.
They're going to purchase a
fire truck.
Thank you, but we need to know where.
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's one of the ones that we assess it, that is part of the Fire Protection Service District where they assess a tax.
Can you let us know at some point?
Sure.
And thank you so much. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think Carolina is the one out of Sam New.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever
All right.
it is.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second, Powell.
All right. Been moved and properly second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7393, budget amendment, DSS revenue increase.
I'm asking where are those funds going with DSS? And I know it's a critical time, so if you will say to the public where those funds be going to DSS.
These are going to the services for adults for the following services, service areas: in-home aid, transportation services, congregate meals, home-delivered meals, senior center operations, adult daycare, health daycare, and consumer-directed services.
How much are we providing to make sure that it's going to accommodate?
This is a revenue increase.
And especially
Federal revenue, it's $246,834.
Thank you. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There's a second.
Second, Powell.
Moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7372, fleet auction revenue and expenses.
I did not pull that. Maybe someone else pulled it.
All right, we're moving to 7390, budget amendment, Health Department revenue
You
increase.
still need to vote on it, even though it wasn't pulled.
Oh, I'm sorry, we still have to vote. You're right, I'm sorry.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it, so carries the motion. There was a second, wasn't it? Who seconded? Somebody seconded. Let's move on.
Second.
All right, that worked. Okay. All right, 7390, budget amendment, Health Department revenue increase.
I pulled this because it talks about authorizing 2 new positions in the refugee division within the Public Health Department, and 1 full-time licensed practical nurse and 1 limited part-time LPN. This is providing to give services those who have just come to this country. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7377, grant application to enhance air quality monitoring for communities. Louisa.
You skipped 7374.
Oh, that's right. The sheriff budget amendment, 7374, revenue increase for the sheriff's office.
I pulled that, Mr. Dunlap, because of our discussion previously about funds for the sheriff's office. I'm wondering if they have funds that they receive through their means of phone calls and other means that monies come through the sheriff's department.
They do, but this is, the item that we're voting on here is a donation of $200 from a citizen in Mecklenburg County that was
From a
pleased with their
citizen.
services.
Oh, so move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Now we're at 7377, the grant application for enhanced air quality.
I didn't pull that.
All right, we're moving on.
You have to vote on it.
All those in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Let's get a motion. I'm sorry.
I make a motion to approve the grant application.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded.
All in favor?
All-
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Ryan White.
Item 7391, grant application, Ryan White, 16-year health.
I pulled this because of the longevity of history of support of Ryan White. And I think I've said this before, I don't know whether you remember or not, but I met he and his family years ago in San Francisco, California. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
And this means that there will be funds available for those who are suffering with the AIDS crisis in this community. So move.
It's been moved and
Second.
properly seconded. Jarrell seconded. Commissioner Leek moved. All right. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7382, commissioning consultant selection, Discovery Place Nature Center.
Who's going to employ the consultant? And what
Mecklenburg
firm?
County. Mecklenburg County will employ the consultant. This is a consultant that is responsible for verifying the building systems are installed and functioning as designed as part of that larger project we're doing there.
Thank you. Feel safe with that. So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7409, donation from MLS Group America, LLC.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and properly seconded. That came from Commissioner Altman. All right.
This is important.
All those in favor?
Yeah, that's important. Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposes? The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Item 7378, joint proclamation declaring February. Oh, we've done both of them. All right. So that completes our consent agenda. At this time, we'll move to commissioners' reports. Up to 3 minutes. We'll start with Commissioner Jarrell.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Commissioner Powell.
Two things. I just want to thank Dr. Washington, and I want to thank you, Chairman, for just the extra compassion about, and Commissioner Jarrell, really talking about making sure that everyone's respectful of the choices that people make. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Altman.
Thank you. I want to take my time to speak about Ethan Rivera, a CATS driver who was shot and killed in the line of duty over the weekend. I heard Ethan's mother speak about him yesterday. He moved to Charlotte to be close to his children, and he was beloved by his family. They are shattered by grief and the senselessness of such a random act of violence. As many of you know, it's suspected to be road rage. A driver came up to this CATS bus driver and shot him in the head, and he died of his wounds within a day. I hope all who are listening will help spread the word to anyone with information about the gunman to reach out to CMPD. Mr. Rivera deserves justice, his mother and children deserve justice, and as a community, we need to ensure that we get this individual off the streets. We should also think about slowing down and how we can each play a role in reducing the fraying of our society. We should look for opportunities every day to support and show our thanks, not only to the entire Katz family, which is really struggling in the wake of this event, but to all our public servants in our community and every department across the county, the city, and the towns who wake up every day, interact with the public, and make this community run.
All right, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the members of the Health Committee for today's service that they rendered to this community. We had some powerful presentations, and I hope that you keep your handouts. We had some wonderful guests to participate in that meeting on today. So those of you who are members of the committee, thank you, and especially for our team who work for the county, thank you for your support and all that you do. Alan and Smith and Lisa and the rest of you, thank you so much for your time and your energy. And especially to our manager for providing, let me see, hon, sit back just a little bit, the items that you let us have to help us through the lunch period, because it comes at 1 o'clock in the day. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Commissioner Meyer.
I got cut off earlier, but that's okay. I just want to say, and I wish they were still here, but I just want to say the energy which these mostly women had for masks, I hope they would have the same energy for getting guns out of schools and solving health disparities and solving disparities among our educational attainment goals and so on and so on. I mean, if we could take that energy and use it toward things like that we have to talk about every single day, we'd be in a better place. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner McDowell.
I think I've said quite enough for today.
All right, well, final comments. Again, I cannot thank our health professionals enough for the work that they do. And while I'm doing this, let me just go ahead and say it. I think Mecklenburg County has the best staff of any company or business or governmental agency that I know. And I've had the opportunity to travel around the country and interact with a lot of them. And I don't say that just because I'm from Mecklenburg County. I say that because I truly believe that to be true. I also want to give kudos to this board. Sometimes it's definitely challenging to have to listen to people who are rude and disrespectful and who care about no one other than themselves. And you guys did that with ease tonight. And so I want to commend you for that. Sometimes that is definitely difficult to do. And lastly, we have exhausted our agenda. There's nothing else to be said.
Do adjourn.
Chair. All right.
Yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, been moved and probably seconded. Any unreadiness? All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. The ayes have it, so carries the motion. Meeting stand adjourned. There's nothing else to be said. Chair. All right.
Yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, been moved and probably seconded. Any unreadiness? All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. The ayes have it, so carries the motion.